Good morning to you, and welcome to today's proceedings of the National Assembly, this being the 13th day of March 2019. This is the third session of the 12th Parliament, the National Assembly. The broadcast is brought to you by the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. It is a broadcast available on KBC Channel 1, Bunga TV, as well as YouTube, courtesy of the Parliament of Kenya YouTube channel. This morning, a number of businesses have been lined up, among them some motions. One of them has been conclusively debated. That motion is by the Honorable Member for Kimilili Constituency, Honorable Didmas Barasa, and it's on the development and implementation of regulations for management of fares charged by public service vehicles. And a question will be put to that regard. The member for Wundanyi constituency, Honorable Danson Mwashako, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs 2 questions, and these questions will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations. Question 1. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the arrest of one Charles Salim Mwadime, a Kenyan of passport number A1247191 from Wundanyi constituency by the French authorities at Remiremont town in France, and subsequent detention since 28th August 2018? Could the Cabinet Secretary inform the actions taken by the Kenya Embassy in France to secure the release of Mr. Charles Salim Mwadime and further ensure that he gets legal representation? The member for Kuresoi South constituency, Honorable Joseph Tunui, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Irrigation whether or not the Cabinet Secretary is aware that potato farmers are facing massive exploitation by middlemen who use unregulated packaging bags, commonly referred to as tusura. And question number 2, what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure regulated and standardized packaging and weights of potatoes by potato farmers in the country? These questions will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. The member for Taita Taveta County, Honorable Haika Mizigi, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Housing, as well as Urban Development, a question, and this question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. What is the current status of construction and expected date of completion of the Ikanga airstrip in Voi, Taita Taveta County? If you're just joining us, these are live pictures from the National Assembly where the business is about to begin. The broadcast is courtesy of the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit, PBU, in conjunction with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. The broadcast is available on KBC Channel 1, Bunga TV, as well as YouTube.
Let us pray. Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the offices of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose trusts you have committed to our charge. Amen.
32.
Let's have the quorum bell rung for 10 minutes.
There is lack of quorum, and the quorum of the House or of a committee of the whole House shall be 50 members, and if there is no quorum present, when the chair is taken, at the time appointed for a meeting of the House, just such as this one, immediately after the saying of the prayer, then the Speaker shall order the quorum bell to be rung for 10 minutes, and that quorum bell is being rung right now. That is courtesy of the Standing Orders 34. The member for Embakasi East Constituency, Honorable Babu Ongelio Wino, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Water and Sanitation. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that there is a water shortage in Embakasi East Constituency? When will the ministry commence drilling and equipping boreholes in the constituency to curb water shortage? These questions will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The member for Magarini Constituency, Honorable Michael Toya Kingi, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife whether or not the Cabinet Secretary is aware of the increased human-wildlife conflict in Bombi, Chakama, and Garashi areas of Magarini sub-county, which has led to loss of lives and destruction of crops, thus affecting livelihoods. What measures has the ministry put in place to end the rampant occurrences of human-wildlife conflicts, considering that the affected areas are bordering the Tsavo National Park? What measures is the ministry putting in place to expedite compensation of victims of human-wildlife conflicts in Magarini sub-county? These three questions will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The member for Sigowet Soin Constituency, Honorable Kipsenget Koros, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry to explain the measures put in place by the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, to ensure that Prime Steel Milling Co. Limited, a manufacturing plant in Gomwet Pana area in Sigowet Soin constituency, does not illegally dump hazardous waste materials and other pollutants into the environment. When will the ministry respond to various complaints regarding the activities of the milling company that have had huge negative impact on the health of the population, and earlier numerous complaints addressed to the Director General NEMA, notably in October 2018? These two questions, which are related, will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The member for Alego Songa Constituency, Honorable Samuel Atandi, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Energy whether or not the CS is aware that during the financial year 2017-2018, the Rural Electrification Authority had not installed the approved electricity transformers meant for Alego Songa constituency. What steps is the Cabinet Secretary taking to ensure that the transformers are installed, and by when will this be done? These questions will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Energy. And finally, the member for Mwatate constituency, Honorable Andrew Mwadime, will ask the Cabinet Secretary for Water and Sanitation what plans has the ministry put in place to construct dams and ponds in Mwatate constituency for provision of water for livestock and for household use. This question will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Quorum has been achieved.
I think we are good to go.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
We have 2 petitions, and I can see Honorable Robert Mbui. You look like you're ready to go. Yes, petition.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to present this petition which I had presented in last session, and it lapsed because of time, regarding funding of co-curricular activities in public primary schools. I, the undersigned, on behalf of primary school parents, draw the attention of the House to the following. 1, that Article 43(1)(f) of the Constitution of Kenya and Section 28 of the Basic Education Act 2013 entitles every Kenyan child to free and compulsory basic education and obligates the state and parents to facilitate access to quality basic education. 2, that co-curricular activities are an integral part of the education process that not only ensures that the education process produces all-round persons, but also serves as an income earner to learners who pursue co-curricular related careers. 3, that Section 54(7)(r) of the Basic Education Act recognizes the importance of co-curricular activities by obligating the County Director of Education to manage it alongside other sports, education, talent development, among others in counties. 4, that in furtherance of government's policy to provide free basic education, the Ministry of Education, via a circular dated 7th February 2017, banned charging of extra levies in primary schools and provided capitation of 76 shillings per pupil to fund co-curricular activities. 5, that the said capitation is remitted to schools for utilization at various sporting levels as indicated as follows. Subtitle 1, at the school level, 46 shillings per pupil. At the sub-county level, 15 shillings per pupil. At the county level, 10 shillings per pupil. And at the regional level, 5 shillings per pupil. 6, that the meager funding of 46 shillings per pupil left to schools under the financing arrangement is not adequate to sustain the mandatory co-curricular activities in primary schools and the regular purchase of consumable co-curricular equipment. 7, that if the situation is not mitigated, many budding talents in public primary schools may fail to blossom for lack of the opportunity to go beyond school level. 8, that efforts to have the Ministry of Education review its capitation on co-curricular activities upwards or approve supplementary levies to be charged by schools have not yielded satisfactory action. And 9, that the matters presented in this petition are not pending before any court of law or independent body. Therefore, Madam Speaker, your humble petitioners pray that this National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee on Education and Research, 1, recommends to the Ministry of Education to consider upscaling of government capitation for co-curricular activities in public primary schools from 76 shillings to a minimum of 150 shillings per pupil or more, with a view to avail sufficient activity fees at school level. 2, causes the Ministry of Education to initiate an audit of the cost of co-curricular activities per pupil at school level with a view to recommending a reasonable capitation for co-curricular activities in subsequent sporting years. 3, recommends that the share of the said capitation of sub-county, county, and regional levels be submitted directly to the relevant offices. And 4, makes any other order or direction it deems fit in the circumstances of the matter. And your humble petitioners will ever pray, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I think I'll go on to have Honorable George Murugara present his petition on displacement of residents, loss of property, and closure of schools in Tharaka Nithi constituency following politically instigated land clashes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to present this petition on behalf of the residents of Ntoroni sublocation in the Tharaka constituency following their loss of property land due to politically instigated land clashes. I, the undersigned, on behalf of the residents of Ntoroni sublocation, Ntoroni location, Tharaka North sub-county in the Tharaka constituency, draw the attention of the House to the following. Number one, that ownership and access to land as a factor of production is an essential enabler of economic empowerment of citizens. Number two, that between 1995 and 1997, residents of Ntoroni sublocation, previously known as Masavini sublocation, were displaced from their land due to politically instigated communal clashes. Number three, that as a result of the displacement, residents lost their property and other basic social amenities, including the following 9 registered primary schools that were razed down during the clashes. The schools were Karimba Primary, Kibango Primary, Mpunguru Primary, Machavini Primary, Kanjoro Primary, Riamwanki Primary, Kioru Primary, Riamiko Primary, and Kiumbe Primary Schools. Number four, that since then only 2 schools, namely Kioru and Riamwanki, have been reopened, hence denying a majority of children the right to access basic education. Number five, further that victims of the communal clashes have been rendered internally displaced persons, IDPs, and are perching as vagrants in deplorable conditions on any available public land. Number six, that the matter was conclusively investigated by the government through a commission of inquiry led by one Zachary Ogongo and a report published in 2007. Number seven, that 12 years since conclusion of the inquiry, neither the commission report nor its recommendations have been acted upon. Number eight, that if the matter remains unresolved, victims' inalienable constitutional rights to property, access to education, and access to basic social amenities shall remain at the risk of grave violation. Number nine, that the matters presented in this petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal or any other independent body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee on Lands, number one, investigates the circumstances under which the Zachary Ogongo-led commission report on the matter has never been implemented. Number two, intervenes through the relevant government ministry and agencies to cause expeditious implementation of the recommendations of the said report. Number three, causes investigation into historical injustices committed to the displaced residents of Ntoroni sublocation with a view to recommending appropriate remedies and compensation for the losses incurred as a result of deprivation of livelihood. Number four, recommends to the relevant government ministry and agencies to fast-track resettlement of internally displaced persons on their land or on any other alternative land set aside by the government for that purpose. And number five, recommends any other relief it deems fit in the circumstances of this petition. And your humble petitioners will ever pray. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any member, I can give 1 or 2 members to say something about the 2 petitions. And I have so many requests, I don't know for what, because we are not yet in substantive business. But if anyone is wishing to say anything on the 2 petitions, put in a request for intervention, please. Let's have the Leader of Minority, Honorable Mbadi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to make my contribution to this petition, especially the first one by Honorable Mbui, regarding issues of amounts that is advanced to schools, or rather the amounts transferred to schools to take care of co-curriculum activities. Madam Speaker, co-curriculum activities are very important, in fact, for the development of our children. And if, as a country, we have decided that we want to give our children either free primary education and subsidized secondary education, we must invest in that, in education. We should not play PR with education, Madam Speaker. And a lot of times, many members will agree that when our children are going for sports, members of parliament become donors. And it is putting a strain. Sometimes it causes friction between members of parliament and the teachers because they need the money. Members of parliament probably were also not financially prepared, and they don't, it is very difficult for them to understand. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, and I think this House will again find time to discuss this, I think the Ministry of Education is conning the country.
Order, members, order. I don't know if it's the machines or a lot of high consultations.
All these things I've said were not.
I think that the technicians should look into the machines, but members should also consult in low tones so that we can hear the Leader of Minority. Go on.
No, Mbui sijui amepata committee wapi ama. But anyway, Madam Speaker, I hope I'm audible enough.
Yes.
It can be heard. Madam Speaker, I wanted to conclude by saying that what is happening currently in the Ministry of Education, to me, is close to conning the public. The ministry is conning the public because the ministry has talked about 100% transition to high school from primary school, which is a good idea. But, Madam Speaker, we need to prepare and plan for some of these policy directives. Because right now, when you talk to the principals, the heads of our high schools, they will tell you that the 22,000 capitation per student, which the ministry has been giving to schools over the years since the advent of subsidized education, has now been cleverly reduced. Because the Ministry of Education is slashing 6,000 plus per student to go to infrastructure development, leaving these schools with less than 10,000 actually to cater for the, for the support of students in schools. Madam Speaker, I actually was discussing with the chair of KUPPET here. I think it is something that we are going to bring up to this House and we discuss. We need to allocate resources. We are going to the season of budgeting. If it is the question of lack of resources, there is nothing as important as education. This House must prioritize education so that we give infrastructure funds separate from the money, the capitation that is being given per student. But, Madam Speaker, I urge the committee to look into this matter of supporting the co-curriculum activities. Thank you very much.
Let's have Honorable Dawood Rahim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would to go to the second petition by my neighbor, Mheshimiwa Murugaru. And Madam Speaker, I would want to say it's good that the member has brought this petition where he implores that the Zachary Ogongo report should be implemented. But, Madam Speaker, he should be mindful that the Zachary Ogongo report does not just cover one section, which you can forget the other section, because, Madam Speaker, as we stand at the moment, the honorable member for Tharaka, his constituents have expansion into all of Meru County. Not just one constituency, but many constituencies. So, Madam Speaker, when he brings this petition, he should be ready that when Zachary Ogongo report, task force report will be implemented, it should be implemented in full and not just for one sublocation or one location. It should cover all the constituencies, Madam Speaker. So, my good friend should be ready
Honorable Dawood. Honorable Dawood,
Yes, Madam Speaker.
you're talking about a report, and I'm not sure that,
Madam
is
Speaker,
what
he has just mentioned it.
was it
uh,
mentioned in the petition?
That is part of the petition. He has asked for that Zachary Ogongo Commission report to be implemented. But he wants it implemented in one corner of his constituency.
Honorable Sankok, what is out of order? Let's give Honorable Sankok the mic.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I think our dear Honorable Member is bringing Meru politics into the House. And this is just purely politics. You know, Honorable Speaker, I think is out of order to bring those little clashes, Meru politics into the House.
Madam Speaker, I'm not bringing Meru politics because Tharaka County is not part of Meru. Meru is a different entity than Tharaka, even though we speak nearly the same language, but we are not one and the same people. Madam Speaker, the other one I would want to talk about is the first petition, where we are talking about free secondary and free primary education and funds to the schools. Madam Speaker, in this country, we do not have free primary or free secondary education at all, because the government is not giving funds for primary or secondary schools for the food. So they should cater for the food, then it becomes a free primary and free secondary. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, I'll give two more members. Let's have Honorable Milemba Umboko.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to add my voice to the voice that was done by the petitioner on education issues, especially the primary school co-curriculum activities, together with even the second school co-curriculum activities, so that when the committee will be looking at this, it looks at it entirely. Currently, the government has moved from the cognitive curriculum that was mainly giving a lot of emphasis to the cognitive skills to the new curriculum where we are moving to, which is CBC, that is competence-based curriculum. In the competence-based curriculum, co-curriculum activities become extremely important because they are actually developing the learner skills on psychomotor and other levels of skill development, which are important. Unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, these co-curriculum activities are not funded. And if they are funded, like the petitioner has put it very well, they are poorly funded. And currently also, the little funding that goes to the co-curriculum activities in both primary and secondary schools, Honorable Speaker, they are taken to schools, but the head teachers are asked to take all the money and return it to the ministry officials. So it becomes the ministry officials who are actually controlling these funds from their levels. And that is why members of parliament, parents, are asked later on to start giving in money to support these activities when the original capitation for co-curriculum is with the ministry officials. Honorable Speaker, this is an issue that will be very important for this country as we move toward the CBC curriculum, and therefore I want to support that petition. Thank you.
Okay, before we go on, honorable members, let's take time to welcome the students from St. Anna's Preparatory School in Westlands constituency, Nairobi. We also have Light International School from Karen, Nairobi. You're most welcome. Honorable Maoka Maore.
No, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, it was about the petition on the Meru.
Yes, you are the second to last person to contribute on the petitions.
Yes.
Briefly.
So, Madam Speaker, what we have, the Ogongo Commission largely resolved an issue just before the Tharaka Nithi was hived off from the Meru County, the larger Meru district. And if you followed the sentiments by Honorable Rahim, you will find that anybody who was neighbored the Tharaka has really been a victim of a serious expansionist tendency, that those who will be examining the petition needs to worry about fulfilling an urge for expansion at the expense of all the neighbors. And usually, even the Meru National Park has been a victim. So that's what I wanted to raise, Madam Speaker.
The last person, the last honorable member, Honorable Hassan Malim. Honorable Murugara, remember the petition still has a long process, so you can still interact with it. No, I'm not letting you speak. I'm not letting you speak. You will still have you will have a moment to interact with it at various stages. Honorable Hassan Malim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to support the first petition about education, funding for co-curriculum activities. Madam Speaker,
Go on, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, funding for free education is really a problem. The 100% transition to secondary school, Madam Speaker, has created a backlog of students who do not have infrastructure in schools, and this has affected many constituencies. We only have the CDF funding for infrastructure development, which is not enough to schools. Apart from the
Honorable Malim, please come to the dispatch. Come to the dispatch area. We can hardly hear you.
Madam Speaker, I beg to support the first petition, which was in regards to funding for co-curriculum activities in schools. As far as I'm concerned, that is a noble idea that the petitioners have prayed for. However, we have a major problem, Madam Speaker, in terms of funding for infrastructural activities for schools, because the 100% transition to secondary schools has affected schools in terms of capacity for infrastructure. There's serious lack of classrooms, dormitories, and where students can be able to accommodate in schools. It's therefore my prayer that the petition by the petitioners is really looked into, not only issue of co-curricular activities, but funding for infrastructure in schools. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I support.
We will stop there on the petitions, and I thereby order for that the petition by Honorable Robert Mbui is duly tabled before the Committee on Education, placed before the Committee on Education. And the second petition by Honorable Murugara is duly put before the Committee on Lands. Next order.
Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion.
Is the Honorable Osoro in the House?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That concerned that available reports indicate that on average, road traffic accidents in the country cause an estimated 3,000 deaths, with many other victims injured and maimed as a result, and placing Kenya among the countries with the highest road carnage globally, and further concerned that it is estimated that the cost of the economy from road carnage accident is in excess of about 300 billion shillings annually, according to the National Transport Safety Authority, Road Safety Status Report 2015, and aware that legislation and policies in place to a large extent addresses the key road safety risk factors, and the challenges is in implementation and enforcement, cognizant that road safety awareness would help in combating road accident in the country, acknowledging that Section 4.2 of the NTSA Act mandates the NTSA to develop and implement road safety strategies and facilitate the education of members of the public on road safety, recognizing that schools provide the largest and most concentrated group of members of the public who can benefit from road safety education. This House resolves that the national government urgently develops and implements a mandatory and examinable curriculum for training of students and pupils in primary and secondary schools on road safety. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next, we have the Honorable Omboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that Article 53(1)(b) of the Constitution provides that every child has a right to free and compulsory basic education. Further aware, in addition to providing free compulsory education, the government is also implementing the free tuition secondary education, appreciating the government's policy of achieving 100% transition of pupils from primary to secondary schools, concerned that this policy has resulted in a stretch and strain on schools' infrastructure and facilities as a result of the large number of students admitted in secondary schools, cognizant that this is strong evidence that adequate high-quality infrastructure facilities, better instruction improves student outcomes and reduces dropout rates, among other benefits. Further cognizant that day secondary schools could be the key to ensuring widest access of secondary education, especially for pupils from humble backgrounds, due to their reduced costs in comparison with the boarding schools. This House urges the government to ensure that at least 70% of the total funds allocated under secondary schools infrastructure improvement program is allocated to public day secondary schools to cater for improved infrastructure, and further, that these funds be allocated as capitation grant. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Before we have Honorable Waluke, I don't know if he's in the house, let's take time to welcome students from Kamoiro Boys High School, Kirinyaga Central, Kirinyaga County. They're in the public gallery. We also have Kirimunge Primary School, again from Kirinyaga Central, Kirinyaga County. Welcome. We have St. Clair Butula Girls High School from Butula in Busia County in the public gallery. Welcome. Is Honorable Waluke in the house? Honorable Waluke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, but I'm not ready to contribute on that.
I didn't get what you said, Honorable Waluke. Oh, you're not ready to give notice, I understand. That's in order. Take your time. So the two motions whose notices have been given will then be placed before the House in due course through the House Business Committee. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Let's have the Honorable Babu Owino to go first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Water is a major challenge in Embakasi's constituency. What is the Cabinet Secretary doing to curb water shortage in Embakasi's constituency? Madam Speaker, housing is one of the Agenda 4 that the
Honorable
President...
Babu Owino, Whatever you're saying, I cannot see it in the order paper. So confine yourself to what you have in the order paper.
Yeah, I'm bringing it, Madam Speaker, because it was not well written.
Confine yourself.
I know
to
my
what-
question. Nobody knows my question here. So just be easy. Because
Honorable
I'm
Babu
trying to
Owino.
prepare it and bring it out the way
Honorable
my
Babu
people
Owino.
needs to understand it.
I know your question because it's before the House. So just confine yourself to the question, please.
Okay, question number 2 before I finish, Madam Speaker. When will the ministry commence drilling and equipping balls in the constituency to curb the water shortage? Madam Speaker, there's one fundamental thing that's happening, that is the
You're
demolition
done.
of
Honorable-
houses in Embakasi East as we speak.
Honorable Babu Owino,
Madam Speaker,
you're out of order. Your question has been heard, it's on record, and it shall be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources by the ministry concerned. Honorable members, just so that you know, we have no debates around questions. You just precisely present your question, and this is the initial stage, and then it goes to the relevant committee, and before the relevant ministry. Let's have the Honorable Danson Mwashako.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask a question by private notice, number 009 of 2019. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the arrest of one Charles Salim Mwadime, a Kenyan of passport number A1247191 from Bundanyi constituency by the French authorities at Remonte town in France, and subsequent detention since 28th August 2018? Could the Cabinet Secretary inform the actions taken by the Kenyan Embassy in France to secure the release of Mr. Charles Salim Mwadime and further ensure that he gets legal representation? Thank you, Madam Chair.
The question shall be replied before the Departmental Committee on Defense and Foreign Relations. We go to ordinary question number 099 by Honorable Joseph Tonui. Let's give Honorable Tonui the mic. If it's not working, you can come down to the dispatch box. There is one working next to you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to ask this question number 99 of 2019. And I'm directing my question to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Irrigation. Number 1, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that potato farmers are facing massive exploitation by middlemen who are using unregulated packaging packs, commonly referred to as tusura? Number 2, what measures is the ministry putting in place to ensure regulated and standardized packaging and weights of potatoes by potato farmers in the country? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Very well. The question shall be replied before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. We have students from Grand Star Junior Academy, from Embakasi West constituency in Nairobi. Welcome, Grand Star Junior. Next question is by the Honorable Haika Mizigi, but I am made to understand that she is out on official duties, so we shall defer it to a later time. Question number 102 is from the Honorable Michael Thoya Kingi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask question number 102 of 2019, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife. One, is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the increased human-wildlife conflicts in Bombi, Chakama, and Garash areas of Magarini sub-county, which has led to the loss of lives and destruction of crops, thus affecting livelihoods? Two, what measures has the ministry put in place to end the rampant occurrences of human-wildlife conflicts, considering that the affected areas are bordering the Tsavo National Park? Three, what measures is the ministry putting in place to expedite compensation of victims of human-wildlife conflict in Magarini sub-county? Thank you.
The question shall be replied before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Question number 103, Honorable Kipsengeret Koros.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask question 103 of 2019, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry. One, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the measures put in place by the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, to ensure that Prime Steel Milling Company Limited, a manufacturing plant in Ngomwet Pala area in Sigawet, Soin constituency, does not illegally dump hazardous waste materials and other pollutants in the environment? Two, when will the ministry respond to various complaints regarding the activities of the milling company that have had huge negative impact on the health of the population, and earlier numerous complaints addressed to the Director General, NEMA, notably in October 2018? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question shall be replied before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Let's have the member for Alego Usonga, Honorable Latandi, and I'm also made to understand that, oh, he's right here. Yeah. Go on, Honorable Latandi.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask question number 104, stroke 2019, in the order paper today. The question is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Energy. And part one, is the Cabinet Secretary aware that during the financial year 2017-2018, the Rural Electrification Authority, REA, had not installed the approved electricity transformers meant for the people of Alego Usonga? Part two, what steps is the Cabinet Secretary taking to ensure that the transformers are installed, and by when will this be done? Thank you.
The question shall be replied before the Departmental Committee on Energy. Question 106 by member for Mwatate constituency, Honorable Andrew Mwadime.
Your question 106/2019 to the Cabinet Secretary for Water and Sanitation. What plans has the ministry put in place to construct dams and ponds to Mwatate constituency for provision of water for livestock and for household use? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question, we are resuming debate on this particular motion, and the mover, Honorable Rueda, has a balance of 10 minutes to complete our moving of the motion. Honorable Rueda, you can come down to the dispatch box. We seem to have some hitches.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Diabetes affects people from all walks in life, from the young baby just delivered to the very old men and women in their early 90s. Honorable Speaker, there are 3 types of diabetics, with the most common in Kenya being type 2. It accounts for up to 90% of the people living with diabetes. It affects people from the age of 40 to 45 and above. Then there is type 1 diabetes, which affects children from the age of 0, and it is also very common in teenagehood. With the chances of diagnosis reducing past 25 years. Honorable Speaker, type 1 diabetes has no known cause. Doctors say the children develop what's known as autoimmunity, that their immune system, instead of fighting the diseases causing agents like bacteria and viruses, the immune system destroys its own healthy body cells, also known as insulin-producing cells in the pancreas. Honorable Speaker, the last one is the diabetes type 3, also known as gestational diabetes. This is a diabetes during pregnancy, and it affects expectant mother due to hormone imbalances during pregnancy. Doctor says it is not controlled or diagnosed. If it is not controlled or diagnosed, it can lead to loss of pregnancy and can persist and develop to type 2 diabetes. Yet, if it is detected in time and managed well, then the pregnancy will survive and it tends to disappear after 6 weeks. Honorable Speaker, blood pressure can lead to diabetes, and diabetes can cause blood pressure. And this seems like what befell Esther from Lamu, yet she never had any idea that one could result to another. To easily manage and continuously screen to identify that she is asymptomatic and it is likely to have diabetes. Honorable Speaker, diabetes is less in rural area compared to urban area, though currently it is on rise in both areas more than it has ever been seen before. But even as it rises, diabetes management is still very expensive. Honorable Speaker, an individual suffering from diabetes has to eat 3 meals a day, and those on insulin injection must have at least 3 snacks in between the 3 meals. Otherwise, low sugar level can make it challenging for them to carry out daily activities. Honorable Speaker, imagine where the like of 65-year-old Esther, who has no source of income, gets money to buy food and snacks. Honorable Speaker, if it is a child living with diabetes, then they may not be able to concentrate and stay in school should they miss snacks, as the risk of low sugar is high. Honorable Speaker, if an individual is diagnosed with diabetes, they'll be put on lifelong medication. If 1 week-old child is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they will live with the injection till they live for 101 years if they make it to the age. Honorable Speaker, once diagnosed with diabetes, an individual will need insulin and syringe. The insulin will go for Kenya shillings 1,000 and last for 1 month on average, yet it could even last for a shorter period like 2 weeks, depending on the dose as prescribed by the doctor. Honorable Speaker, that means that if a child is diagnosed at 1 month, by the time they are 65 years of age, an individual shall have spent 936,000 for needle alone. Honorable Speaker, for those living with type 2 diabetes, the cheapest tablet is Kenya shillings, 10 shillings. For the first line, but as they progress, they will need change or top up with another tablet. They take 2 tablets per day at early stages, and after 10 years, living with diabetes, they need to add up a minimum of 2 injections per day to top up with the tablets, coupled with visit to the hospital once a month on average. Honorable Speaker, to manage diabetes patients need combination of education, physical activity, a healthy balanced diet, and medication. Honorable Speaker, a healthy diet is very expensive and need an active person to especially work to afford it. The individual living with diabetes also needs self-blood monitoring, and to do that, Honorable Speaker, they need a glucometer worth Kenya shillings 3,500. That takes average 5 years and has to be replaced. A strip for the glucometer that costs 70, with over 5 strips needed per day for every frequent blood test a day. Honorable Speaker, major public hospitals store 2 types of insulin of the 5 available major ones, and this limits people living with diabetes as the treatment for this disease is highly individualized. Honorable Speaker, as I was preparing to table this motion, I saw a lot of Kenya post a petition to His Excellency the President on their Facebook pages. And I would want to quote their plea in this House, and it reads,
Honorable Rueda, you have a minute to go, so wind up.
Okay. The petition is, I would like to petition the Kenya government and His Excellency President Kenyatta to remove taxes on blood glucose test strips. Diabetics need very frequent blood testing plus a day, and the cost of strip is 70. The outcome of the non-frequent testing your blood will mean more hospital admission from hyper to hypoglycemic episode. I am asking if everyone could put this on their status. Honorable Speaker, these are the desperate measures that Fatuma has taken to plead with us to subsidize and make medication care for diabetic patients. On the same breath, Honorable Speaker, I want to urge my fellow member of this House to join me by supporting this motion and urge the government to institutionalize diagnostics testing and diabetes in workplaces and community settings, and increase funding for education and prevent diabetes. Honorable Speaker, in the same line, I want to urge the government of Kenya to subsidize routine diabetic screening, treatment, and put in place measures to ensure an effective diabetes care system at all levels of health care.
Okay, I'll give you 1 more minute. A minute to move. To wind up and move. 1 minute.
Honorable Speaker, I am very confident that if this motion gets the support of this House, 5 years from now, we will be better off as a country with very productive citizens who shall be contributing to the economy of this great country, yet living with diabetes. Honorable Speaker, this motion is for those Kenyans who work in small businesses that can't afford to provide them with insurance. It is for those farmers who, due to climate change, can no longer depend on their farms. Honorable Speaker, it is for those fishers who security cannot guarantee and for several days in water come back with no fish. Honorable Speaker, this motion, lastly, is for kids living in slums and diagnosed with diabetes type 1, but still dare to dream that they will be pilot like me. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I move. And Honorable Speaker, I would like to ask Honorable Kubai Iringo Igembe Central to second.
Oh my God. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My neighbor here and also my cousin is amusing me because he thought you get the opportunity, but he has just walked in, so he didn't know what was transpiring, and I would like him to pay attention so that at least he can contribute later. Madam Speaker, I stand to second this motion, and I also thank my sister, Honorable Waida, for bringing it into this House, and more so to highlight the sensitivity of it and also the problems which Kenyan citizens are going through this dangerous and also bad disease, which is afflicting many Kenyans, both the young, the middle-aged, and also the old. Madam Speaker, diabetes can be rated as one of the most chronic diseases and the most expensive diseases to treat in this country or in the world, and more so, most of the victims ending up maybe losing their lives because of poor management, because of lack of funds to treat the same, and because of other diseases which follow up after one is inflicted with the diabetes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if we don't keep our population healthy, Madam Speaker, if the citizens of our country are not treated well and they don't have strength or they don't have healthy bodies, we cannot achieve our national goals. Even our Vision 20 that we cannot achieve without the human force or labor. We cannot even achieve the big four because if we don't have the people to do these things, or if we have people who are sickly, then, Madam Speaker, we can't move. And therefore, it is very important, as the motion is requesting, Mr. Speaker, that the government initiates programs, the governments put in funds to make sure that at least we have diagnostic equipment in each and every health center in our localities, and more so, even mobile clinics whereby people can be tested and that being diagnosed of this disease early enough, Madam Speaker. Because once a disease is diagnosed early, I strongly believe it can be managed to some levels and many can be cured. But unfortunately, here in Kenya, we get people to realize that they are sick when the disease has already entrenched itself, and therefore treatment becomes very difficult. As the saying goes, that prevention is better than cure. Madam Speaker, we better start looking for ways and means of preventing these diseases, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have got high blood pressure, a big problem in this country. We have got cancer and deadly disease, which is afflicting each and every person in this country. And by the time these diseases are discovered, that is the time we are just arranging to send these people off because already they will die. Madam Speaker, but if we had those measures put into place, community health workers in our localities, nurses in our small hospitals and other places, they are trained, and also people to get sensitized, to go and have themselves checked, so that once we discover that these diseases are there, then one can be treated. And this will need facilitation, this will require funds. Madam Speaker, I don't see why, as a government, we can go and pitch a tent in a market so that we can give people voting cards. But we cannot pitch a tent in the marketplace to go and request people to be tested for these diseases. We keep on talking of medical camps, and once you go to a village, you find that in a village of 100 people, 5 are diagnosed with the cancer. And from there, things are left at that until those people just go to, to their graves. And the government does not do anything. That is the high time we invested in the insurance of our people through the government, where when somebody is afflicted by these chronic diseases, the government steps in to save that life, and more so to cater for the expenses, Madam Speaker. And diseases like cancer, Madam Speaker, once it afflicts a person, it will affect the whole family, it will affect the whole clan, and the community at large. Fundraisings here and there, left, right, and center. Cows are sold. Businesses are dilapidated. Chambers are sold, and the person goes. You lose the person and you lose the property. This is the time we invested in our people through an insurance program, whereby if one is accidentally afflicted by this disease, then the government steps in. And more so, if early testing is done and one disease is discovered, Madam Speaker, then it can be managed, we shall save life, and we can also save the properties which could have not lost. Madam Speaker, we need even this community, all the workers, and those people or programs where people can be educated on the need to get this testing. Some people, or the people are ignorant, they would say, me, I'm healthy, I have no problem, I don't see why I should go get to be tested. We need counselors and those people in our communities. We can even have our chiefs trained so that when they go to the embarrassers, they have a way of selling the idea to the people to go out there and get it tested, so that once the disease is discovered, it saves a lot to Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are talking of putting up schools, we are putting up our other facilities around us, but sometimes we ignore the construction or putting up all the facilities nearer the people, whereby you find that some diseases, they can always only be tested in a level 5 hospitals or here in Nairobi. But we need facilities in Turkana. We need facilities down in the northern area. We need them in Lokchogyo. We need them anywhere in this country, whereby one can walk, not even look for a border to go and get tested. And with this one, Madam Speaker, we can save a lot in terms of loss to human life and also loss to properties, and also to improve our economy. I don't see why, Madam Speaker, one can go insuring a vehicle for 300,000, 400,000 Kenya shillings a year, and it's just a machine, and we cannot go that direction to save our population. This country is losing a lot of people who are in the prime of their life in building this nation, Madam Speaker. And every day we are mourning that people are dying because of these diseases. This is the high time we should not keep quiet. This is the high time we should move forward and put in our laws which will entrench this one into our laws and be implemented to the letter. I second, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Honorable members, I go on to propose the question, which is that aware that the prevalence of diabetes in the country has been on the increase, with approximately 458,900 cases reported in Kenya, according to the International Diabetes Federation report of 2017, representing 2% of the total adult population. Deeply concerned that many people with diabetes continue to lose their lives each year due to lack of awareness of the disease, inability to afford management of the condition, and the expensive medication, noting that people living with diabetes can live longer and lead comfortable life if they receive the right medical care and support to help them manage the disease. Further noting that there remains inadequate funding for the implementation of the effective strategy for the prevention, detection, and management of diabetes, thus hindering Kenya's achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal number 3 and Vision 2030, recognizing the importance of early diagnosis of diabetes, aiding treatment, monitoring treatment progress, monitoring recovery, and preventing life-threatening and expensive complication. This House urges the government to institutionalize diagnostic testing for diabetes in workplaces and community settings, provide for education, prevention, and subsidize routine diabetes screening and treatment, and put in place measures to ensure an effective diabetes care system at all levels of the health care. Let's start with the Honorable Manzo Kitonga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very, very important issue. Madam Speaker, is very important in a nation, and a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. We are spending a lot of money as a country dealing with health care, and diabetes has two types, and the one type is genetically generated, or one was born with it, and the other one is acquired as one moves by. And as the doctors in this house will tell us, this is a disease which can be managed very well because it is largely a lifestyle disease, and it is good when the government or institutions invest in a system such that we can avoid lifestyle diseases. And you've heard from the mover, and I really want to thank her, the Honorable Rueda, that blood pressure and diabetes are related, and one can cause the other to happen. When you look at blood pressure, Madam Speaker, it is largely got something to do with the pumping of the heart, and the heart pumps because of a component called potassium. And when one adds salt or takes a lot of salt, or generally hard salt, if you boil it, you break it into components, you still remain with the taste, but when it goes to the body, it's digested differently. But if you just add it, it goes wholesomely into the body, and because of chemical reaction of sodium chloride and the potassium chloride, the potassium is worn out by the chloride, and I'm sure the Honorable Sanko 001 knows this well as a doctor. And then you slowly lose potassium from your heart, and by 20 years your heart cannot pump, and therefore you develop hypertension or blood pressure. To recover or to be able to regain what you had originally, it will also take very many years of self-control and limiting yourself on salt and many other things which cause diabetes and blood pressure. So it's more of one's behavior first and foremost. And if institutions, while training their staff, can have a component of training on health, then we are building our nation, and many people will be aware of what is happening with their bodies, and they will take care of them, and eventually we'll have lesser sick people and less expense for the nation, and even for the insurers. Because even if we insure, and everybody has a careless life, does not do exercise, does not walk around, you move from a car to office and back to the house and never do some exercise. Obviously, this diabetes and blood pressure will still catch up with you. So I want to agree with this motion that first, as institutions, the institution of Parliament, the other day did testing here, it was very good, and any other government institution should have a program on health for their people so that they learn. Yesterday I was training my CDF team, and we have gotten trainers to train them on health habits and healthy living so that I have effective employees who are not always in the hospital for one thing or another. And I think as a nation, if we do that, and the government departments now take this as a serious policy, that once in a while you train the officers on health habits and health issues, then we will reduce, by that particular act alone, we will reduce this disease by halfway or probably 3/4 way, because it's more of a lifestyle issue.
And then secondly, when it comes to the medication, or when now it happens, it is important that we take care of it, and government institutions have the best programs to make sure that the unreachable are reached, and especially the poor people, as the mover have said, people who have no knowledge, and people who by their setups, they don't even have the money to treat this disease. So if we reach those children who are born with it, if we are able to reach people who are already sick and they can be helped, it's much greater. And even a bit more of research, Madam Speaker. You know, the apples are very important in one way or another, and especially when they are fermented and they make an organic apple cider vinegar, which used once in a while with hot water in the morning. It helps actually reduce chances of one getting cancer. It ensures sufficient digestion, and actually people who use apples or apple cider vinegar hardly get this blood pressure thing. It's just a habit thing, it's a knowledge thing, Madam Speaker, and I believe it can save a lot of lives. Because if you use apple cider vinegar, which is very cheap on our supermarkets, and especially if it is organic, then there's no chance that you'll get diabetes in your life, and you stay healthy for a long time, and to save you a day from the doctor and get it there. So again, it's the diets we have, so that we balance our diets, so that, Madam Speaker, we make sure we take enough vegetables, enough fruits. We balance our diets as many people are taught in schools. And I believe that will also go a long way. There's nothing out of order, my good friend. This is just pure science. It will go a long way. It will go a long way. Thank you.
I thought he's giving very useful information.
Madam Speaker, is it right for the Honorable Mwanzo to act as if he's a doctor and to talk about apple cider and to lie to Kenyans that if you take apple cider, you're not going to get cancer? Is it right? Does he have concrete data that would otherwise dispute what you're talking about now? Please table the data. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very good...
I think you just need to, again, this is information going out to the public.
Yes.
In fact, I didn't know that the nutritionist side of you.
Yes.
I'm just getting to learn that. It's a new expertise, it seems.
Yes.
But you should not use prescriptive words.
Yes.
Just be careful.
Yes, I think, Madam Speaker, I must put a disclaimer on that, and he's right in that. And I want to say, even if you Google, the information on Google and the information available, it will tell you it is subject to consulting with your doctor.
You might find yourself carrying some liability.
Yes, that's right. I do agree with you.
Cannot handle.
I do agree with you. It's just informative, and even and it's good to put a disclaimer. And ordinarily, this goes with a rider. In fact, I want to thank the honorable member for that. Goes with a rider that you must consult with your doctor. You must read widely. And I'm sure my good doctor here, the member for Seme will agree with me. It is subject to, and already if you are already sick, then you need to consult your doctor, obviously. But diet goes a long way, and then doctor will tell any Kenyan or any people that if you have the right diet, you are likely to be better. Of course, even the story about apple cider vinegar is just a historical thing. It's a long practice, and scientists have some data on some people who have used that and have found themselves in very good health. But it's not a cure in itself. I must really rectify that and want to agree that I must put a disclaimer on it, and the people should verify that information because it is truly going to public. But what the short and long of it is that diabetes, pressure are lifestyle diseases, and if we teach each other through the government institutions, we pass as much information as possible, even from Parliament, even from this debate, to people. People will be wiser, and the people will take care of themselves and will have lesser patients, lesser people going to doctors on this particular lifestyle disease, and that it is good that government institutions make sure it is a priority so that we reduce chances. And also, now that health is devolved in the counties, our health people give information, disseminate information. Printed materials can be picked from health centers, wherever people visit. While people are doing public participation on other things, one of the health officers in the counties can pass information on how to handle people with diabetes, children, and that information will help. Call upon people to visit the health centers, and most important also, have the medication there.
Honorable Cecily, are you on a point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Urge members and urge people, at the counties level, so that information flows, because information is power. The Bible even says people perish for lack of knowledge, for lack of information. So if we pass knowledge and also cleanliness, and use of water, clean water, use of clean water. In fact, sufficient water reduces diseases by half. So even a person suffering from diabetes and takes enough water, it still helps. It's worse than somebody who's taking dirty water or taking water which is not clean with the minerals. It will really help. So I really want to finish and say that actually proper use of medication and proper diet helps with the lifestyle diseases such as cancer, such as blood pressure and diabetes. I really beg to support, and I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well said, Honorable Manzo. You've given very useful information, but like we said, as representatives of the people, we have to be very careful not to give prescriptions, because the people of Makueni have a lot of trust in you. So when you say something, they might follow it as Bible truth. So we have to be very careful. Let's have Honorable Cecily Mbarire.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. And I want to begin at the outset by congratulating Honorable Rueda Obo for finding it fit to bring this particular motion. Madam Speaker, there's no, okay, Mr. Speaker, I realize the chair has changed. Mr. Speaker, I really want to say that the biggest burden we are having in this country is the disease burden. And there's no better person to talk about the disease burden than this House, because we know that a week never passes without an MP, at least on average, doing 2-3 harambes per week in relation to either a person who's gone because of disease or a person who needs to pay medical bills after treatment. And therefore, anything that will help to reduce the disease burden in this country must be something that we as a House must support, and support in earnest, Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of diabetes is one that affects us in a very big way, especially in rural areas. I think it's hardly possible to have a family that doesn't have diabetes, affecting them at a personal level. And I know that especially in the rural areas, one of the biggest challenges we have with diabetes is either late or poor diagnosis, because a lot of these people are not able to go to hospital and get properly diagnosed. The cost of treatment also is pretty high. I remember, the many times I've had to send certain people money to be able to buy their medication because they cannot afford to go a single day without medication for diabetes. The third thing is the challenge of proper feeding and eating the right thing when you're diabetic. So then the cost of feeding also goes up, Madam Speaker. And therefore, it is important that the government comes in with a policy that, number one, aims at preventative measures so that we are sure that we can be able to create awareness amongst the populace, amongst the people, and also to parents, because diabetes is also affecting little children, so that they can be able to stay away from those things that may lead to diabetes. One of them being healthy lifestyles, Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was in Rwanda about 2-3 months ago. Now, something very interesting that happens in Rwanda is that it is a government policy that on Friday from 2 p.m. onwards, every government officer must go to a sports activity. And they organize themselves in their offices and form teams for football, netball, whatever sport it is. And so they are usually very busy on Friday afternoons playing certain forms of sports. And one may wonder, why does government have to come up with that kind of a policy? Because it is a must, but it is because they realize the cost of managing some of these lifestyle diseases. And so they want people to live healthy. The same government has had a car-free day, where certain days, you know, everybody walks to work, including the president. And I think all these measures are really meant at ensuring that we reduce the chances of people getting sick because of lifestyle diseases. We start challenging people to live healthy lifestyles, so that, like in the case of Kenya, where the culture of alcohol and nyamachoma, which leads a lot to these lifestyle diseases, can reduce. And we can even make it mandatory that every Tuesday morning, before members of parliament come back to this house, we all go to Nyayo Stadium and play some serious sports, because we want to reduce that, and we must lead by example, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I really would support that the government comes up with policies that will...
Did you say Madam Speaker?
I'm very sorry, Mr. Speaker. You know, earlier on it was a Madam Speaker on that chair, but I apologize, Mr. Speaker. I still have her in my mind. I still think she's the one sitting. So preventative measures, Mr. Speaker. The second thing is awareness creation. One of the biggest challenges that is causing children to get into diabetes pretty early is parents feeding them with the wrong kind of food, Madam Speaker, especially in urban centers, where we are overfeeding our children with the French fries, that is chips, overfeeding them with the processed foods like some sausages and bacon, and we think that's a very good thing. And although that's what kids want, I think it takes upon us as parents to make conscious decisions and realize that these particular processed foods are actually contributing to unhealthy lifestyles and therefore disease on our children at a pretty early age. So, Mr. Speaker, I feel that we need a holistic approach by government to ensure that this does happen. But we do have a very good structure at the community level, that is the community health workers, who in my view are grossly underutilized, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the community health workers are those people who go door to door checking on sick patients, especially the very old and poor who cannot be able to go to hospital, who cannot be able to afford even to have the energy and the money to move from where they live to a nearest hospital. And therefore, we need to empower these community health workers, pay them well, and make them the people who move from homestead to homestead, checking on these patients, making sure people are tested, creating awareness, ensuring that they are eating well, so that we can be able to prevent, death out of these diseases that, as the Honorable Manzo said, it's just about how you manage the disease once you have it. It should not lead to death. And we know that when diabetes is not properly taken care of, it's leading to kidney failure. We know how many harambes we are doing every week to take care of patients who need kidney transplant. We know how many Kenyans are going to India every day for kidney transplant, and therefore there's obvious the need for a serious policy decision by government to take care of this disease and to actually come up with serious intervention measures all the way from the grassroots to take care of this particular issue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support and really, thank my sister, Honorable Rueda, for finding it fit to bring these important motions. Thank you.
Very well. Shall we have Honorable Gogo Achieng, member for Rangwe?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. It's a fine morning to give my contributions on this very important motion that has been brought by an honorable member in this August House. And before I proceed, I want to give some highlights, just a sentence or so, on the use of apple cider. It is not from a prescriptive point of view, but when we mention certain things here in the House, it also forms a basis for research outside there. So I honestly wouldn't see why Honorable Manzo would be put to task to say that he's not a doctor to prescribe, but apple cider is useful nutritionally in management of certain aspects of certain diseases. I also want to bring it forth on mentioning the use of processed foods and lifestyle diseases. Food is processed mainly for it to be used when there is no glut. Food is processed to increase its value, and also food is processed so that it can be used where such food does not exist. It is not in the use of processed foods that we get diseases, but on the amounts that we take that can bring about diseases. So sausages are not bad, and sausages do not bring diabetes. Neither does chips bring diabetes. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to talk about neonatal diabetes mellitus and its consequences, especially in the latter ages. When we do not diagnose diabetes in the neonates, this can bring about morbidity, and also this brings about diabetes among adults in the later ages. It is important that we have health audits, and especially that are community-based, and also it's important that we do health audits at the places of work, targeting many other diseases other than diabetes. Diabetes is literally coming up in Kenya currently to replace HIV and AIDS. And we find that communities that were earlier on not predisposed to diabetes are currently high diabetic sufferers. So management of diseases in diabetes in communities is very important, Honorable Speaker. And as a country, it is high time that we came up with proper guidelines, which I believe has already been established by people in the health profession for the management and care of diabetes. But the challenge that we have as a nation is that we have these guidelines, and following them is a real big issue. We have various community interventions which we could follow and look at. Like has been earlier mentioned, I want to overemphasize that there is need for education, especially among communities, because people do not know, up to now, there are people who do not know, especially in poor communities, what to do when they are diagnosed with diabetes. We need to have education on self-management, which is a problem, and then we have to change lifestyle, especially when we are already diagnosed. We need to improve early screening and management, because many people have lived with diabetes for very many years, but as it were, if management is not done properly, then complications of diabetes come up. We also need to assess impacts of social support networks, and on this I propose that we probably code sufferers so that we are able to follow them in time and give them proper medical care. We also need to look at a nation at the nature of doctor and patient relationships. Oftentimes, and with the system that we have that has had healthcare and health generally devolved, we do not have doctors move into where the communities are. One, probably because of the shortage of doctors that we have. We also have doctors and the medical fraternity. We have nurses, we have health workers and health support staff move into communities because of probably poor payment. We have had several nurses strikes in this country, and these are the people who would help with management and care of diseases and lifestyle systems, like diabetes. It is important, Honorable Speaker, that we look at the patient unmet needs. Other than the suffering conditions that they have, we have food insecurity as we are talking right now. And one of the best and better ways of managing diabetes is through nutrition. But you cannot manage nutrition if you are not food secure. So for us to, other than diagnosis and screening, it is important that the food that we take we have easy access to it, and it is also available. So as we address the issue of screening and management, it is also important that we relate food security to the management of diabetes as a disease. Honorable Speaker, I also want to talk about the need for communities to be largely educated on the management of diabetes, but at the lowest level, at the village level. Training of village elders who always hold barazas to help train or to help talk about issues and management of diabetes at the village level. Because you find diabetes sufferers with the consequences of diabetes. At some point they are required probably to have an amputation of one of the appendages of the body, but this cannot be done because of the beliefs and the fears that people have. So if we were to have this one done on time, then I believe that we would mitigate many of the problems that we have with the consequences of diabetes. Among my colleagues here in Parliament, people have the privilege of having a few meals here in Parliament. You can do breakfast, you can do 10 o'clock tea, you can do lunch, and you can also do 4 o'clock tea. But the biggest and the biggest and the worst enemy of diabetes and high blood pressure is the food that we eat. So allow me, Honorable Speaker, to warn members of Parliament that the food that we are predisposed here in Parliament can be a big source of diabetes. If you're taking tea and several mandazis and maize, and you also take sweet potatoes, my friend, know very well that you are predisposed to diabetes. Just do a bit at a time per day. Because when we go hanging around and we go eating and eating and eating, this is a big source of diabetes among adults. And it is also important that we reduce on salt intake. It is also important, Honorable Speaker, that we generally do exercises. I know members of Parliament have opportunities to do exercises in the gyms, but we need to advise our constituents also that as much as they may not have access to do exercise, it is important for them to have a life where they are able to sweat each and every day. That for any work that one does, one must sweat. This sweating makes us not have high blood pressure and even diabetes. Having said that, as my contribution, it is important, I support, that we develop management systems and screening systems at the place of work, and also for those who do not work, we should really take that down to the community level. Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Gogo, that sounded like quite an expert prescription. And I could tell Honorable Nyikal was shaking his head, and he will get his chance at some point. Honorable Ogutu Abel, member for Bomachoge, Borabu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sir, can they please give him another mic? That sounds. Yes, you may use the dispatch box.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this chance to also contribute to this noble motion that it comes at a time when the nation of Kenya has one of its 4 pillars being healthy, and therefore it's an opportunity that we really need to look into and see how best we can engage ourselves to make sure that as healthy is a key agenda, so the tenets of healthy are well captured in the programs that are going to be implemented. We are talking of diabetes that has been described as a slow killer, and now being seen as one of the serious killers in this country. I will talk from the perspective of coming from a community, the Gusii community, where diabetes has become very rampant, with people dying immediately after they have been diagnosed because the disease has gone too far. Now, the motion in discussion is that, Mr. Speaker, we want to improve our testing, our screening, and also the treatment of diabetes. Why do we need to do this? Because in most cases, people will walk healthy until the day they have been announced to be diabetic. And that normally is very late. We want to limit the number of people who are joining the diabetic club. So we need good screening. We need good screening in various centers that are accessible to our populations. I want to look at this screening, including institutions, including even places like in Parliament. People find it hard to go walking in the health centers to look for facilities. If these facilities can be inbuilt within places, within the settlements, within the market centers, people will find it easier to access them for screening. We're also looking at an opportunity that we are now experiencing as a nation. The government has embarked on acquisition of national NHIF cards. So because the cards are now going to give people opportunity to access these facilities, we need to put them in strategic places where they can easily be accessed. The population that is affected, Mr. Speaker, comprises of people who have retired, many of them, and people who are living in the rural areas who do not have funds to afford screening of diabetes. So we want to assume that now that we have the NHIF cards, it will be easier for anybody to access these facilities if they can be within reach. Now, diabetes is also very expensive in terms of dietary requirements. I could imagine that the screening centers and testing centers could also be centers where cheap and relevant foodstuffs can also be found. We know that you need to eat well when you are diabetic. You need to eat specific foodstuffs, and this is not the case in the rural areas. The diet in the rural areas is normally very simple, and that is not what we will expect if our people have to remain healthy, especially those who are affected by diabetes and those who are potential recruits into diabetes. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that diabetes has tremendously increased because of new lifestyles. It has increased because of imported diets that we are now being exposed to. It has increased because of lack of screening that can prepare people to undertake necessary precautions to avoid being fully recruited into diabetic. So I want to suggest that as we engage ourselves with the agenda under universal health care, we should think on how we can reach those who have already been affected by diabetes, those who are potential candidates for diabetes, but also to provide resources in our schools, in our institutions, so that people can easily access the diabetics, the facilities for testing and also screening of diabetes. The most crucial part of diabetes for those who are affected is monitoring it. you'll find that it will be very difficult for somebody from the rural areas to go all the way to sub-county clinics and also county clinics for screening and for testing. Mr. Speaker, I will recommend that as we engage in this discussion, we allocate funds that can introduce small kiosks to cater for monitoring of diabetic cases and even of blood pressure, which are also very closely related to diabetes. This would be an opportunity to create jobs, but it will also be an opportunity to have a healthy population, to reduce the most vulnerable groups from losing their lives. So I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that as we engage in this discussion, let us all agree that diabetes is a serious problem right now in this country, that we need to access facilities to those who are affected and to those who are potential to be affected. But more importantly, we need to enhance the monitoring of diabetes. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion.
Before I give to Honorable Mutua Barasa, member for Kimilili, allow me to recognize Mutu Ngoni Academy, Academy from Mavoko constituency, Machakos County, at the Speaker's Gallery. As well as recognize at the public gallery, Acacia Crest Senior Boys from Kajiado East constituency, Kajiado County, as well as University of Nairobi Utafiti Day Primary School from Kibwezi West constituency, Makueni County. They are all welcome to follow the proceedings of the National Assembly. Honorable Mutua.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to add my voice on this very important motion. And I want to state from the very onset that I support, and I want to congratulate the Honorable Urwaida. Indeed, she has demonstrated that women are coming up to take their rightful positions. That gone are the days when the only thing that will make you realize a woman is around is the smell of a very nice perfume, Mr. Speaker. So this is very good. And I also want to ask the government and the policy makers within government that this is a very important aspect of ensuring a healthy population in this country, and that they should consider spending more money in early testing of diabetes, even cancer, and make it mandatory, Mr. Speaker. There is a lot of wastages in government, mistaken priorities that are upside down, funding some functions or things which are not really important, Mr. Speaker. And health is a very important aspect of human life, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these diseases, terminal diseases, cancer, diabetes, are making Kenyans more poorer. These Kenyans are spending all their lively, savings, selling their properties, their cows, their land. Some, instead of getting loans to service to boost their businesses, they are servicing hospital bills. We have title deeds that are being held by hospitals because of bills emanating from such diseases, Mr. Speaker. And I think this motion, if approved, if we resolve, and the government goes ahead to implement this motion, it's going to provide a lifeline to very many Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've seen a lot of, like this time, Mr. Speaker, I expect that those who are involved in policy formulation in the health sector are going to use what the members are contributing today, and by resolution, this motion, to come up with something in the budget so that we can look at it and approve, because we will be happy as members of parliament to approve a budget to appropriate money that we are completely aware that is going to set up this cancer and diabetes test diagnostic centers, within the population of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
a country that doesn't invest in early testing is a country that is plotting that will have no future. Because the future of this country, the future of this nation lies in the healthy population. It is the healthy population that will give a great service to this country and assist this country going forward, Mr. Speaker. And even as we advocate for this kind of, the early testing and diagnostic centers being established, if there will be, by so doing, Mr. Speaker, we will be, investing and trying to spur, to stimulate the economic growth so that in future, instead of Kenyans spending all their savings in footing the bills of medications, they can spend their savings and the money that they are getting on an everyday basis to actually boost the economy of this country. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important motion that this government must take it seriously once approved, Mr. Speaker. And I also want to ask the Committee on Implementation to ensure that whatever that this House resolves or approves, they follow it up and for it to be improved, Mr. Speaker. And not just following it up, it should form the basis of what to be brought to this House for the purposes of budgeting and approval. Because we are a representative of the people and we think on behalf of Kenyans, and once we have pronounced ourselves on a matter, the policymakers, the government must take them very, very seriously, that whatever comes out of this House will form the basis of implementations by budget monetary allocations and the priority on what is to be funded, Mr. Speaker. For these very few remarks, I also want just to reiterate my congratulations to the Honorable Rueda that indeed this is a very good motion. I support it wholeheartedly, and I pray those who have the responsibility of implementing it to implement it within the shortest time possible, Mr. Speaker. This is a motion whose time has come, and we just have to approve it and forward for, so the government can implement it. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Next is Honorable Martin Owino.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many information have been given. I'm not going to go that line, but I want to highlight some things which we have as assets in this country, and we are not using them, Mr. Speaker. Number one, there is a policy paper called Community Strategies. This is a paper that elaborates how we should do our primary health care. Mr. Speaker, as I congratulate Honorable Rueda, screening comes out of education. When people are aware, they will yield to be screened. And all this in the strategy paper for community health, Mr. Speaker, is well clear that the most and effective point of health intervention is a household. And each community health worker, where they are well structured and functioning, oversees about 50 households. So they know who may be having frequent urination, thirst, weight, fatigue, all these symptoms of diabetes. So if we can resource community health workers, and Mr. Speaker, I have a bill coming on that, and I hope members will support it, so these people do not just work as volunteers. The problem we have, Mr. Speaker, in this House is that we are investing in wrong strategies, in wrong priorities. Instead of putting money where the government is going to be more cost-effective and save money, we use money in the higher ends, which I'm going to allude to just in a few minutes. Mr. Speaker, we have level 1, which I've said is a household level, level 2, which is dispensary, and level 3, which is health center. If resourced well, as asked by Honorable Member Ruwaida, then most of the diabetes problem will be managed, well managed right there. Right now, we have amputations going in households, and sometimes it's a breadwinner. And that house plunges into poverty. A case that would have been prevented and life elongated. Mr. Speaker, if we can empower the cadres, I've said, community health workers, they will motivate people to have a self-seeking behavior, an urge to go to a health center or a dispensary just to check whether everything is all right. Whether you are not sick, but you are concerned that you want to know your health status. It's very, very paramount. And the only person who can do it better is a community health worker who sits down with these people, talk to them. I have a scenario where you can even call a medical camp or equip a facility, but people don't come because of the self-seeking, health-seeking attitude. The Speaker, number two, the management said, if we get it right, if there is no misdiagnosis, if there is no delayance, then we have early detection of that disease. Then we come to the management part of it, which is very expensive for their people, because I'm talking for poor people, impoverished and disfranchised communities that do not even know where 100 shillings will come the next day. The testing kits are too expensive. I'm supporting several of them. It's very expensive to have, and that's where the government should put money. The education part of it is also there. Somebody also talked here about the tax. We don't have to ask the president to elevate tax. No, that's the House decision, whether to add tax or to remove tax. So the onus is on us, Mr. Speaker, to look into this important commodities not to be taxed. Mr. Speaker, I would like to agree. The move, I think the government does not really have to subsidize this stuff. They have to fund it. Because if they fund it, they will save money in the end. The reason why people show up with complications in higher-end institutions is that either cases were misdiagnosed or neglected, or they don't know. And that's what the problem we have with all NCDs. So what I'm trying to say is that instead of buying a dialysis machine, which takes care of a complication of a diabetes, the renal failure, why don't you use much of that money in screening and educating and paying community health workers? It's a simple math. We neglect it down there, we pay expensively, including loss of life and loss of livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, as it is well structured in the information there, when the mover did it, prevention is key, but our people have to be enabled. They have to be supported. As we talk of fruits, vegetables, there's somebody out there who cannot even buy a piece of orange, right? We talk of exercise. We parliamentarians, we talk of gym. In Dewa, even a football for a kid to run and a field to run on is not there. And that's why we said each constituency should have a sports academy. Mr. Speaker, in the old times, when these estates were coming up, Jericho, Makongeni, where there were recreational facilities. But since the onset of grabbers, this disappeared. It should be a policy that when you are putting up an estate or anything, there should be those facilities. Then you can say, people, let us be active. Now you tell them, where are they going to run? So it is our undoing. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say, sometimes it's lack of water in the body that predispose people to this condition. In my constituency, there are areas that access to water itself is 20%, clean water. And that's a role of a government. So even as we say people's lifestyles, we have to know that many people still need enabler, which is a government to provide water, to provide where people can do exercise, to provide enable factors, for access for mothers to visit clinics 4 times as required, so that they can also be detected early. Then, Mr. Speaker, the early detection is also very paramount. I talked to it. Screening for blood pressure, screening for diabetes itself. These are easy exercises that can be done by community health workers. And I think we should do more in schools, because the juvenile diabetes that we know, type 1, is no longer the only one. Even type 2 in kids and teenagers is really taking toll. So screening kids in school, I think, is one of the things we should do. And of course, in working places. Then when it comes to treatment, self-management, insulin's very expensive for our people. Just like antivenoms, which people pay for, they shouldn't pay. But these are basic public health requirements. So I think they should be given these things free. And also, I want to close by saying, if government want to save money, let the government invest in level 1, 2, and 3 for all NCDs. Because we work with these diseases, we don't know. But the earlier it is detected, correct diagnosis is made, and proper treatment is prescribed, then that person will live longer and for a long time. I end up, thank you, I support this motion, and I yield some of my time to Dr. Nyikal, because we are going somewhere.
Honorable Martin, you're out of order. There is no way you are going to donate time to Honorable Nyikal, because I can tell Honorable Nyikal is on the screen here, and he will get a chance. To my right now, Honorable Hassan Mari, member for Mandela East. That member must have taken leave. Honorable Ole Sankok David. That has taken leave. Shall we have Honorable Jaldesa Dinda, member for East Europe?
I left my card. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to this very important motion. And as I do that, I would like to join my colleagues in congratulating my sister, Honorable Rueda, for always being proactive and bringing issues that is important to the ordinary citizen of this country. Mr. Speaker, I rise to say that diabetes is one of the most chronic diseases affecting Kenya today. Mr. Speaker, the prevalence of diabetics in Kenya has more than doubled in the last 3 decades, accounting for 20% of the deaths in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today, 1 in every 17 Kenyan has diabetes. This situation is so alarming that there is need to set up prevention and treatment of this disease, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the prevention and treatment can be achieved through regular screening and testing as proposed by Honorable Rueda, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, according to experts, the causes of diabetes is attributed to lifestyle, stress, being overweight, and obese, Mr. Speaker. And some of other factors, Mr. Speaker, can be connected to a generic makeup, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, people are not getting screened as often as required. Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad we are having our able doctors who double up as members of parliament and whose contributions have really enriched this debate. Mr. Speaker, can bear me witness that if you are not regularly screened for diabetics, you are likely to carry a disease that is curable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, doctors advise that if you are not diabetic, then you ensure you go for screening at least once in a year. Mr. Speaker, if any of the members of your family has diabetes, then you should be screened 2 or 3 times in a year, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that you can detect and be treated early. Mr. Speaker, if not controlled, diabetes has dire consequences, including possibilities of heart attack, stroke, blindness, kidney failures, and other scenarios that can lead to other complications. Mr. Speaker, when I talk about exercise, Mr. Speaker, I have a personal testimony to share. Mr. Speaker, when I joined this parliament, I was quite overweight. And when I went for a regular medical checkup, Mr. Speaker, the doctor told me that I was on the borderline and that if I did not work on my weight, I was a candidate for diabetics, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I had other family members who were diabetic, so that quickly, Mr. Speaker, forced me to take action. And I can confirm, and members can agree with me, Mr. Speaker, you included, because I and you have ever had serious exercise of running, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, today, I can stand here and tell this House that I was able to shed those weight, Mr. Speaker, within a span of 1 year and 2 months, and attained, Mr. Speaker, the right required weight. And Mr. Speaker, now I can bear witness in this House that I have moved from borderline to being very normal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you. And Mr. Speaker, it is not only exercise. Mr. Speaker, in exercise, you can only achieve 20% of that goal. Mr. Speaker, the other 80%, Mr. Speaker, need to come from healthy eating, healthy, balanced diet eating. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to advise this House and Kenyans that we need to look at what we are eating. And Mr. Speaker, the most contributing factor of diabetes is carbohydrates, Mr. Speaker. If you don't eat in the right required quantity, Mr. Speaker. The doctors advise that you should avoid unnecessary sugar, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to eat more fruits. And Mr. Speaker, these items that I have just mentioned are not cheap. And therefore, Kenyans need to be given a reprieve through the big Agenda 4 of food security. Mr. Speaker, we need to encourage the government to invest in food that will contribute towards the health of this nation, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I am a very worried representative of the people of Isiolo County, Mr. Speaker, where this issue of diabetes is on the rise. Because, Mr. Speaker, we seem to be losing focus on this big Agenda 4 and concentrating so much on unnecessary politics and sideshows. Mr. Speaker, as a contributor, I want to urge my colleagues who are here, let us really see what we can do. Not only to come here on a Wednesday and start supporting motions. Mr. Speaker, supporting alone will not help. Mr. Speaker, I also want to just echo what one of the contributors has talked about, the importance of community health workers. And Mr. Speaker, in that regard, I want to really congratulate my county of Isiolo for partnering with the Living Goods to ensure that we have resourced and enhanced community health workers. Mr. Speaker, these are the people who are the first contacts with the people in the rural setup. They can be able to advise and encourage people to go for regular screening. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to echo my colleague to say that those are the areas that the counties and the national government really needs to focus. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support this very, very important motion and congratulate my sister once again. Thank you.
Next is Honorable Wabura, member for Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Although the motion urges the government, and we know the issue of urging, we in the health community will bring these issues, as we have often done, to the ministry so that what is discussed here is actually implemented. And Mr. Speaker, may I also start by appreciating the research that was done by the mover. I was impressed by the 3 types of diabetes he mentioned. There's a 4th one, which Honorable Gogo mentioned, the neonatal diabetes. But it shouldn't worry us. It is transient, it occurs soon after birth, and the only problem we have with it, it may be an indicator that in the family or in the same person later on, diabetes may appear. So it is probably the earliest screening, but it is not in itself a public health problem. Mr. Speaker, diabetes, together with the other non-communicable diseases, the so-called NCDs, are a major public health problem in this country. That is diabetes itself, high blood pressure, heart diseases, and obesity, and then the associated problem of kidney failure. Mr. Speaker, these are things that, given at the late stage, are very expensive. We buy expensive equipment, dialysis machines, the testing machines, which are extremely expensive. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, we in Kenya and other developing countries, these diseases, the lifestyle diseases, have caught up with us before we get rid or control infectious diseases. So the countries like our country are having what we call double burden of disease. We have diseases of infection like HIV/AIDS, like infection in children, we like malaria, while at the same time we are now taking up the non-communicable diseases, which are lifestyle diseases. Unfortunately, again, Mr. Speaker, the non-communicable diseases, the lifestyle diseases, affect fairly influential members of the society. So unless we are careful, we may actually find that all the money will shift in that direction and will shift to the high-level technical treatment that is expensive, dialysis machines, heart treatment, and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion because it is talking about health promotion, prevention, and screening, and early detection. Mr. Speaker, that is exactly what we should do. The motion is talking at the workplace, at the community level, but that, Mr. Speaker, really all ends up at the community. The workplace is also part of the community. And this is in line with the principle and the policy of primary health care. Mr. Speaker, this is the most effective way we can go. But what is the best way to approach it? Mr. Speaker, the best way to approach this is have a national program looking at all the non-communicable diseases, diabetes being one of them, because in a way they are related and they are linked. The cancers, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, they are linked. And with diabetes in particular, the program must look at lifestyle, starting with food. The worst foods are actually the sugars, the fats that is so easily available. The best foods that we should eat are actually the vegetables and fruits. And that brings me, I was also impressed by the research that has been done by my colleagues on the fruits, the apple cider vinegar. Yes, they are not off the mark. Apple cider vinegar is actually, the main content is acetic acid, which actually is known to actually lower cholesterol, affect lower blood pressure, and is actually useful in the treatment of diabetes. It is thought that perhaps it may also prevent it in diabetes. But there are a lot of things that are said about a lot of foods, but what science has really brought out are like apple cider vinegar in effect on blood blood cholesterol, effect on blood sugar, and effect on diabetes. Those are real. But we must look at how is it utilized. Most often, it is actually used in the dressing in salads. You don't find people sitting somewhere with a bottle of vinegar drinking it. But it is an important additive in foods. And I think it actually helps those who would like to take vegetables, particularly uncooked vegetables. The addition of these salads actually make them more palatable, actually better digested, and also improve gut motility so that there is good motion, which is very important in diseases like colonic cancer. So again, I appreciated the research that my colleagues have done. Mr. Speaker, screening. So we have lifestyle, we have looked at food, then we look at physical activity. And I may tell my colleagues that I don't meet very many of us in the gym. That is a free treatment we are actually avoiding or not using. Physical activity is most important in non-communicable diseases, particularly diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. That alone will actually save a lot of us. And countries, in fact, this was a resolution in WHO, I think the year 2004, 2005, physical activity and lifestyle. So countries like, we're being told Rwanda, they have taken to a level where there are policies that make everybody do physical activity. Some of you have traveled to China and you've actually seen people in the morning in the parks actually doing exercise. It's a national policy. So let us not downplay physical activity. The cars are good, but going upstairs, in fact, if you are in a 6-story building and you walk up and down every day, that may actually be quite useful. So physical activity is extremely important. Mr. Speaker, also the consumption of alcohol and tobacco. People see alcohol, the main effect people see is being an addict and being alcoholic. But it has other subtle side effects that you don't see on a daily basis. So if you can reduce your alcohol consumption, you are better off. Cigarette, just leave it. There's nothing it does other than cause illness. It's nothing known. If you look at carefully, tobacco is the only plant that no animal we know eats. Animals know that tobacco is, but we are the only one who are using it as shisha and all those things. So just quit. Mr. Speaker, we must also improve our work situations. People who work in factories, people who even work in farms with chemicals, we must have a policy that ensures that the chemicals they are exposed to, the machines they are exposed to, do not expose them to these non-communicable diseases. Then third one, Mr. Speaker, is screening. Screening. It's extremely important, not only for diabetes, but even for cancer. Well, diabetes, if it is done early, it is picked early. For diabetes type 2, which at this age of us is the most troublesome, it's actually type 1 and type 2 that are problem. But the type 2, just reducing your weight once you are screened and they found you have slightly raised blood sugar, sometimes you will not need any treatment. Just reducing your weight will be adequate. Reducing your weight will be adequate. That is screening will do. Cancer of the cervix, screening can be done at health centers and dispensaries. Cancer of the prostate. And my colleagues here, we all have these facilities. Screen yourself a year for cancer of the prostate. It is useful. So I think this I think is a very, very important motion. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the community strategy. We wrote it in 2004, 2005. Professor Miriam Were, Professor Kaseje, with support from the World, and it has been lying there. I'm happy that people are now taking up and doing it. It is the only way. We are talking of universal health coverage, but We do not have enough money to treat people with expensive machines. But if we use the community,
1 minute for Honorable Nyika, at max 1 minute, so that
Yes.
you finish that point, appreciating your expertise in
so
this area.
if we use the screening, we use promotion, we use physical activity, advice on food, the best way to advise people on this is at the community level. So then we go the community strategy, and we actually pay the community health workers. I'm happy some counties are trying. Ethiopia is doing it. We started with Ethiopia. They have gone a long way in reducing all these things. So let's have a national program based on community strategy, which will reduce our cost and make universal health coverage a reality and affordable. I support.
Very well. Shall we have Honorable Chepkut Chirchir? What is it? You have pressed an intervention. What is out of order? Honorable Chirchir.
Speaker, I just wanted to concur with Dr. Nyakal.
Order. What is out of order? If it is contributing, Honorable Chirchir, you'll get it much later. You had pressed you had pressed an intervention.
It was a very important motion, so I just wanted to be compulsory that all cancer diseases be treated by government.
Order, Honorable Chirchir. You can't contribute through the back door. You'll get a chance. Honorable Bogo Menza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this important motion that has been brought to the House by my sister, Honorable Rueda. This motion is very timely because, Mr. Speaker, we as members of Parliament, we are facing these issues on a daily basis. Every week, we get invited to many fundraisings, to solicit funds, to raise funds, to cater for medical bills for our constituency. So it is important, we as the House, as the government, we need to come up with policies that will support and encourage our people to develop cultures that will actually support them in their habits. Mr. Speaker, if you look at diabetes, cancer, blood pressure, all these are lifestyle diseases. Many years ago, Mr. Speaker, these diseases used to be associated with the rich. But today, these diseases, they cut across, and it affects more of the poor than the rich, because the rich can be able to afford the very expensive testing, screening, syringes, and what have you, the medicine that is required. But for the poor, it has become a tall order, and most of them, it is beyond their reach. Mr. Speaker, the lifestyle diseases, they are actually associated with our culture. They are actually associated with our diet. What we eat contributes about 70 to 80% of these diseases. And I agree with Honorable Dr. Nyikal, what he has actually put across. Mr. Speaker, if you look at what we eat, it is really dangerous, because most of us, we do not, and we've been taught since the low levels in schools that we need to have a balanced diet. When you are taking a meal, it has to be balanced. You must have proteins, you must have carbohydrates, you must have vitamins in it. But when you look at the composition of what we take daily, you will find it is more of one area and one area being left out. And on my side, Mr. Speaker, I'm a Muslim, and my religion teaches me that when you are eating, or when you want to eat, you have to make sure what you take in your stomach, it is divided in 3 portions. One portion of the stomach, it has to take the food. One portion of the stomach, it has to be left for the air. And one portion of the stomach, it has to be left for the liquids. But most of the time, what we take in, we end up taking the entire space of the stomach, and this ended up contributing to many other diseases, many other related diseases because of that composition. Mr. Speaker, if you remember, many years ago, HIV and AIDS was a serious issue in this country. It was a serious disease that it made the government and other stakeholders to come up with serious policies and programs to prevent the spread of this disease. And down the line, you will find that we've managed to bring the levels of HIV and AIDS to some acceptable levels. And this was achieved through the various programs and policies, including testing, including screening, and what have you. And today, if you look at, when you walk around, Mr. Speaker, you will find there are so many free testing centers for HIV. There are so many advertisements out there inviting people to come for free testing and screening of HIV. And the same needs to be done on these other lifestyle diseases, diabetes, cancer, and so forth, whereby our people can be able to go out there, tested for free, so that they can be able to know their health status at any one time. Mr. Speaker, out of these programs, we came up with so many community health workers who are volunteers at the village level. These community health workers, they do a very important and critical job in educating our people about the health-related matters. But we need to go a step further, because what these community health workers, what have they been trained on is mostly on HIV and AIDS and related diseases. But when you look at cancer, when you look at diabetes, when you look at high blood pressure, these ones have been left out and they do not have expertise on that angle. And it is important for the government to come up with policies whereby we can have refresher courses, or we can have these community health workers being taken through those trainings so that they can be able to go back to the village level and be able to educate our people so that they can be prepared for such an eventuality. And we need even to go a step further, whereby we need our community health workers to be visiting our schools. And we need to start early at the ECD levels. We need to start early at the primary levels, whereby our pupils can be able to be trained on cultures, the diets, and what have you. And here we do not only depend on the teachers, but we need the experts. The experts here, it could be the community health workers, it could be the doctors at that level, at the sub-county level, visiting these schools and train our pupils, our sons and daughters on good eating habits, good diets, cultures, and what have you. Mr. Speaker, I want to give a practical example. Last year, I had a walk, an education walk in my constituency, and I invited so many students from the constituency. When we were doing this walk, on the way, one of the pupils collapsed. And because of our bad cultures in our area, where we believe in jujus and genies and what have you, the parent came out and said, you know, this boy has been affected by the genies. Coincidentally, in that walk, I had a diabetic patient who was participating in that walk, and he was carrying around his testing gadgets. And when he saw this young boy collapsed, he rushed to him and he took a blood sample. And immediately he confirmed that the boy was actually suffering from diabetes. And that is when the parents came to know that this boy, it was not juju, it was not genies, it was actually a diabetic patient. And immediately they started taking the preventive measures, and the boy is back in school and continuing with his studies. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and I really urge my sister, my colleague, to push it forward. And we've had a lot of contribution from many members, which shows the sensitivity and the importance of this bill. Exercise is critical. If we do not exercise, for sure, we are just calling problems for ourselves. We are privileged as members, we have an opportunity of going to the gym. But when you go back out there, when you go to the many schools in urban centers today, many of these academies that have mushroomed all over the place, you will realize they do not have even a space for the kids to exercise during the PE lessons. Because of lack of space, the grabbers, the appetite, the high appetite of grabbers who have been grabbing lands wherever they see a space all over the place. This has actually contributed to all these challenges. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to cultivate the culture of training. And I agree with my colleague, Honorable Ceci Mbarire, when she mentioned that in Rwanda, it has become a culture whereby it is being led by the head of state himself. Every Friday at 2, it is a training and exercising time. And it started with the civil servants. But here, we also need to demonstrate, we as members of parliament, we are highly respected at the constituency level. Maybe we need to go a step further and demonstrate that we as members, on weekends, you can call your constituency, you start with a few, and you walk around, or you jog around, and many more will join. And this will go a long way in doing this prevention. As the saying goes, prevention is better than a cure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Shall we have Honorable Gitonga?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've sat here for quite some time. I'm told the gadget had misbehaved as usual, but I'm happy I have caught your eye. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. It is a very important motion that touches on the health care of Kenyan citizens. Diabetes is one of the diseases that are really affecting our people, and it is vitally important that it is actually addressed in a manner that makes our lives to be in uniform with the cardinal agenda we have in Agenda 4, which is universal health care. It has been argued, and it is a statement of fact, that this is a lifestyle disease which really can be prevented or can be tackled in a manner that is more humane than most of the diseases that we suffer from. However, the biggest problem we have is lack of medication, and the medication we have is also very, very expensive. As part of the universal health care in Agenda 4, we should purpose to lessen the burden of medication on all diseases, including diabetes, such that Kenyans are able to afford these medicines without digging deeper into their pockets than they are supposed to do. We also need health facilities, and especially when we talk about the less fortunate areas, the marginalized areas, where you would find that one dispensary is sprung so far away from another dispensary, and the citizens have to walk long distances to have their medical needs attended to. I have in mind my own constituency, Tharaka, where I have constantly informed the government that there is need for intervention, and that intervention may be affirmative or otherwise, to ensure that we do have sufficient health facilities, both from the local authority, from the county government, and also from the national government. It is also important to note that food is important, especially in diseases like this, where there is food scarcity and those affected by diabetes do not have the right food, or the right type of food to consume. It makes the problem graver. It aggravates the problem. And therefore, it is a duty of the government to ensure that food is provided in all quarters, in all schools, in all areas that are affected, so that we can also tackle this problem that actually has to be with us. When we used to be in school, we used to learn that there were two types of diabetes. We had the diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. Today I may not be able to tell with a lot of accuracy what the difference was, but I was told that one is in respect of low blood sugar and the other one was high blood sugar in human beings. These are conditions, in fact, they may not be diseases. These are conditions that just require expertise to manage. And this is important. And this is why this motion that has been brought by Honorable Ruweida Obo urges the government to institutionalize, to bring institutions for diagnostic testing in respect of diabetes in all workplaces, in all community settings, and settings, and to provide education, because we do not have sufficient education. We do not know what these are, especially in the rural areas where it is almost certain that whenever you have any ailment, you walk into a dispensary, you are given some tablets which you take without knowing what they are, and in the process, you may actually aggravate your own situation. It is therefore important to have lessons on how we can prevent and how we can subsidize whatever diabetes that comes along, how we are going to be screened so that you know your position as you go along in life, and what treatment is best for you when it is established that you do have this condition. This is a very important motion, and once we pass it, it is upon the Committee on Implementation to ensure that our government, through the Ministry of Health, and our county governments, through their health ministries, do move with speed and ensure that diabetes victims are taken care of in a manner that is proper, in a manner that is deserving, and in a manner that is less expensive. I therefore support this motion.
Shall we have Honorable Oyoka Oro, member for Bonchari? That member clearly has taken leave as well. Honorable Atandi Onunga, member for Arego Usonga. That member also has taken leave. They were on top. Then shall we have, next is Honorable Mukwana Kamala, member for Rabi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Let have the mic first. You can use the next one.
Okay.
Did you say I tried?
You tried. I think if you go with Bishop, it's more easier. I won't ask for an offering from you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to contribute on this important motion on diagnostic testing, screening, and treatment of diabetes in workplaces and community settings. Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with the honorable members that have already contributed on the floor that our lifestyle has really changed in this country. Honorable Speaker, when you look around, you see most of the families are not cooking food. Many of them, they are depending on fast foods. Honorable Speaker, I am not trying to demonize any food chain in this country, but with the mushrooming food chains that we have today, like KFC and other places, if you keep visiting those fast foods every day, there's going to be a problem in our health status. Mr. Speaker, as parents of today, you realize that many parents don't want to cook at home. They prefer to bring food home. Our children are obese because they feed on the fast food every day, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when we discuss the issue of diabetes, it begins with our lifestyle, the way we live, the way we eat. And I concur with Dr. Nyikal just a few moments ago, Mr. Speaker, when he spoke and explained a few things from his professional point of stand view. Mr. Speaker, apart from just walking, we must go back to our health status, the way we used to eat. I remember my grandmother. My grandmother did not know fried chicken. The kind of food my grandmother could prepare for us, Mr. Speaker, there was no way we could get those high calories of sugar, fat content in the foods that my grandmother prepared. Mr. Speaker, for us to fight diabetes and for us to save our generation and our children and the people to come in this country, we must go back to health eating. So, Mr. Speaker, as we think about what we can do in our workplaces, what we can do in our communities, we should not just be thinking about intervention measures because a situation has occurred, because we tend to be more reactive than being proactive. Mr. Speaker, When we think about diabetes, it is a monster. This is a painful disease. It is a condition of pain. A patient of diabetes has to go through a lot of pain, and not only in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, even in the most places where there is modern ways of health facilities and medication, like the United States of America, people still have a struggle with insulin. People have a struggle with taking care of themselves. And so, Mr. Speaker, we must be on the forefront of making sure that as leaders, we are out there trying to help our people. And, Honorable Speaker, it will be very important to equip our community health workers, to train them more, give them what they need, so that they can go out there in the grassroots, so that they can teach, they can bring the knowledge, they can bring the know-how, how our people should conduct themselves. Those who already have diabetes, they should always, they should be trained more on how to take care of themselves, what they need to do, what they don't need to do, what they should eat, what they should not eat. And those who are free from diabetes, apart from just adapting exercises, we should rethink about our lifestyles, what we eat, what we consume. And living in Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, I found myself being tempted. I live on Mombasa Road, and there is a KFC right there at Total somewhere. So when I'm driving back to the house, it is easier for me just to go in, pick a few legs. You know, being a Luya, I like chicken. So it is easier to go in, and we keep consuming all this deep fried, and then we go do the nyama. So, Mr. Speaker, our lifestyles have to change, and as leaders, we must be on the forefront, even when we have gatherings at home, when we are in our functions, to try and teach our people how to take good care of themselves. Mr. Speaker, way back at home, in the villages, I don't foresee much of a problem like in the cities. The life in the city is very fast. The life in the city is so busy. And in the city, we don't have gardens like the people at home. At home, there's a garden. People will have potatoes. They'll have cassava. They'll have yams. They'll have vegetables of their own. It is easier to adapt a healthy eating style in the village than it is here in the city. Mr. Speaker, as parents, we'll have to take a big role to take care of our homes, both men and women of our times. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to think that I am excluded, but I think I can do better. We must think of going back to the kitchen to cook. Majority of parents don't want to cook. They want easy food. So it is easy to pick up food in a fast food chain, bring it home, and that's why when you look at the kids that we have right now, they have more weight on them than they should be having. Exercising is a discipline, because you can do it today, but find out that tomorrow you are not able to do it. So apart from exercising, we should think mostly about changing our lifestyle. We should also take the education, the awareness to the grassroots. As leaders, we put so much time on politics. When we go to a funeral at home, Honorable Speaker, we talk politics, we talk about this and that, but we really forget the real essence of life, that we as leaders, we must be up there, helping our people to live right, to eat right. At every funeral, at every gathering, we must find out things that we can communicate to our people, communicate to our electorate. And also, Honorable Speaker, think about the village elders. In fact, I saw there is another motion on village elders. But village elders can disseminate information effectively, Honorable Speaker. And we should really be thinking, when we get to the other motion, we'll talk about it, but in this situation, village elders, community workers are very important people, are a very important component of our society, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I am standing here to support this motion because diabetes used to be an alien ailment. Diabetes was kind of something that was foreign. But today, in every village, in every town, we have victims of diabetes. we have people who live with diabetes. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is becoming a catastrophe. It is becoming a horrible disease that is claiming people's lives and making it hard on people that would have been more productive, people that can contribute to this country, have to fight diabetes day to day, and yet we have measures we can put in place, educative lessons, and things we can do to make sure that we combat with diabetes. But mostly, Mr. Speaker, the generation that we have today, I pray that God help us. We need to go back to the kitchen. You find many of our children are at the mercies of house helps, Mr. Speaker. And the house help will just go get a mandazi and will feed the baby. So you find that a baby is 6 months, but the baby looks like he's 5 years old. When you lift a baby of 6 months, Mr. Speaker, the baby is so heavy. The baby is just so heavy, Mr. Speaker, because of chips. Because the mothers are busy with phones, the mothers are busy with the TV and remote controls. People should go back to the kitchen and cook the way Africans used to cook. So I stand to support this motion, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Shall we now have one top here is Honorable Okuome Adipo, member for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this motion, which I think is very important. Mr. Speaker, when I look at the motion and see that almost 500,000 people are suffering from diabetes, which is 2% of adults. That's an extremely high figure. And indeed, if we don't take action immediately, we may find that Kenya becomes a sick society, which will be very unfortunate indeed. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm looking at the motion in two parts, the preventive and the treatment side. The preventive includes a number of things my colleagues have spoken on, especially the eating habits, the food. One encouraging point is that food is covered within the Big Four agenda of the government. I would urge the government, therefore, to take first step by ensuring that the crops we grow should be taken care of this motion we have, meaning it should not be maize alone. We should include in our farming maize, potatoes, carrots, pawpaw, all kinds of things. Because when we do that, we'll be encouraging the balancing of our eating system. Mr. Speaker, I also see it that the ratio of our doctors to the number of people is very disadvantageous. The number of Kenyans per doctor is too high. And therefore, for preventive purposes, it is difficult for us to use the doctors. With this one, I really would like to see a situation when we emphasize on the CHWs, train them well so that they can be part of our preventive actions to take care of this bad disease. I feel that if we have these CWH, community workers, community health workers, we can use them even in the sub-counties, constituencies. And I'm one of the MPs who would be very happy to use them if only we can be given enough money to do that. We are in a better position in reaching all corners of the area than the county government could. And if our CDF could have a budget line for this, that would help, and it would be one first step of taking care of this disease. I therefore feel that the preventive side, since my colleagues have spoken too much about it, I just want to say that the kind of action I would think would be useful are the ones I've spoken about. Now, going to the treatment side, where matters may be a little complicated because we need experts for treatment. Here, I would say that we can use the CHW people, as I said, and also try to use our dispensaries for screening purposes. When they have done the screening and they find a case, if it is still on the preliminary stages, then the community workers can be told on what to do to contain the situation and even eliminate them. Now, I know as we speak, there are a number of injections given to infants when they're about 4-3 months old. Maybe that kind of preventive care should include should include diabetes, so that it's checked early enough. I'm sure if a child is diagnosed for this disease, it will be easier to treat it than if the disease is discovered at a much later time in life. I feel, Mr. Speaker, these are the kind of things we need to ensure that we contain the situation. I know when I talk of diabetes, I'm just doing that because that's what is in the motion. But otherwise, the kind of screening I will talk about should include other diseases as well. And if the government is taking care of that, then we are okay. We can take care of it through screening. The good thing is that even the health side, I spoke on the food side, being in the Big Four agenda, the health side is also in the Big Four agenda. So those two issues, which are very important in controlling this disease, are in the Big Four. And because of that, I would really urge that steps are taken in order that the Big Four agenda in terms of food, in terms of health, can be including diabetes and perhaps other diseases which are preventable. Mr. Speaker, I must thank you for having given me this opportunity, and because of effort not to repeat what others have said, I think I thank you very much for having given me the opportunity. And with that one, I say I support very much so this motion to be passed by this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The next one is Honorable Nyagaka. Honorable Nyagaka, member for Nyaribari Church. Just try the next one. That one seems to be.
Is it any better, Mr. Speaker?
Honorable Tongi, that seems to be no better. Could you just use the dispatch box, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute into this motion, Mr. Speaker. It's a motion whose timing is long overdue, considering the kind of challenges our people have had to go through, Mr. Speaker. health is a basic requirement in any society which is matching. And most countries which have succeeded, Mr. Speaker, have given priority to health. And that's why as a country, and we have a vision going forward to be one of the middle income country, and eventually superpower, we need to manage our health issues ahead of time, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate that sometimes you have given audience to things which are important but not very critical. Because if you don't have good health, Mr. Speaker, everything else matters nothing. If you don't have good health, Mr. Speaker, nothing else counts in life. And that's why as a country, once we get our health issues right, then we'll be able to fix the concerns and the challenges that almost account to 50% of our needs as a human being. Mr. Speaker, when you are healthy, you can function properly even if you don't have enough food. When you are healthy, Mr. Speaker, you'll be able to do your duties as a normal person a lot more than if you don't have the health and you have the money. There are many things countries which have succeeded, Mr. Speaker, have done and have done it well. They have given priority to health management, and we all know prevention is better than cure. If we manage our health ahead of time, and that can only be achieved, Mr. Speaker, by doing screening, and this screening can be done in schools, Mr. Speaker. The screening can be done in colleges. The screening can be done in universities. Screening can be done in public places, including market centers, Mr. Speaker. Then we'll have managed a lot more. But it should not be a one-off. It should not be a strategy where when we are campaigning or when our competitors are campaigning against us, they mobilize a few medical people to come and do a screening in a shopping center just to undermine you. But we need to have a strategic and consistent practice as a government, as a policy. We must have a policy in place to ensure that the screening which is going to be done, Mr. Speaker, will not just be a one-off, but a continuous process where people know that every year after a given period of time, there is going to be screening, and we synthesize the community, the people, so that they can appreciate the need of screening. Our people, Mr. Speaker, are scared of screening. I know most of the times when we were all of us asked at some stage in life, I know when I was working in the insurance industry, Mr. Speaker, AAR, one of the great companies in Africa, Mr. Speaker, the hardest challenge we ever had was asking our people, our members, to go and do a screening. And yet, we know that whatever it is already in your system, you already have it. So you are better off knowing that Mr. Speaker, but when we did civic education, our people were educated and they got information, and we all know information is power, they changed the attitude. Now screening has almost become a lifestyle. But that is only at the higher level, Mr. Speaker, of the society. I wish to have a situation where this screening can cascade downward so that every other person in the society will be able to have an opportunity to do a screening, not because they're sick, but because it's a good thing to do, and it's a way of preventing the health challenges which will come much later if you have not done screening. Mr. Speaker, we have the clinics which have been set up by the government. We are happy that even there is an initiative to have the container clinics. And my understanding of the container clinics, which are still not functional, Mr. Speaker, was to bring services closer to the mwananchi, bring services closer to our people. The way they are going to position those container clinics, Mr. Speaker, in somewhat will help to ensure that the services are going to be accessed by a majority of the Kenyans who otherwise would not be able to get the screening done ahead of time. And we need to come up with a policy, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure this motion will be able to address into that concern, that the screening should be made free. Because if you charge people money for screening to be done, Mr. Speaker, how many of our people can afford to pay for it? And because of that barrier, the majority of the needy cases will end up missing out the screening. And we know the importance of screening is that when you are picked, when they pick that condition at a formative stage, at an earlier stage, Mr. Speaker, your challenges are less than if they pick it at a later stage, when you already got into another high level of complication. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that the container clinic that we are having in the country, among with other clinics that we have set up using the city of money, Mr. Speaker, that will be able to help and address the concern we have as a nation. Mr. Speaker, treatment is not just the only solution to this concern. If we can also listen to the teachings of the experienced people, there are institutions, Mr. Speaker, who have spoken a lot about this topic. The SDA health teachings, Mr. Speaker, on health matters has taught a lot extensively on matters health. They have taught us on the kind of food we need to eat, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of teaching which has been done by Aaron Chi White on the healthy matters and healthy foods, and the teaching that it goes into ensuring this community and the people we are serving in our society are healthy. Because she understood at that very formative age that when people are healthy, when the people are enjoying the healthy, we are able to serve them well, and even as a government, we are able to function a lot better than when people are not healthy, Mr. Speaker. So we need to embrace as leaders, as part of our agenda, we need to have it as one of our deliverables. When we go to the constituencies, alongside the talking politics, Mr. Speaker, because we are influential and we are opinion shapers, we need to talk to our people about the health issues. We need to refer to them to these teachings which have been done, the research. There's a lot of data, Mr. Speaker, and we have seen this data which is where it has been used. People have received and reciprocated very well. Mr. Speaker, people have received good health, people have improved their ways of living, and the consequences that the government has saved a lot of money, which others would have gone into treatment. Mr. Speaker, this money will be used to serve the society, to ensure we have roads, we have good health facilities, to ensure that we have clean water, because this money is a major saving if we can manage it and manage it ahead of time. But that can only be possible, Mr. Speaker, if as a community, if as leaders, we go out of our way, not just to give our lip service, but to make it our topic. Mr. Speaker, I was so impressed in a country like Burundi, my colleagues have talked about it, and Rwanda. These are countries whose GDP is much less than ours, but they appreciate the quality of the power of exercise, Mr. Speaker. You get very early in the morning, people are jogging, and it's a policy from the government, and this is a policy from the president down to everybody else, Mr. Speaker. It's because of this, Mr. Speaker, I'm so happy with the First Lady. Our First Lady has led by example. I wish that can be cascaded down so that even our women, our governors' wives, and our members of parliament wives, the MCS wives, can also be able to do it at a local level, with a view of ensuring that we are keeping our people healthy, we are ensuring that our people are going to do exercise, which exercise mitigates most of these conditions, Mr. Speaker, and will be able to control the development of these conditions ahead of time. We know diabetes has been a killer, has killed quite a number of people in the world. Mr. Speaker, in Kenya it's killing even more because our people also don't have enough information. They end up dying and they claim that it's witchcraft, Mr. Speaker, and we all know it's not witchcraft. It's simply that we don't know what we have because we have not inculcated in ourselves the culture of doing medical checkups, of doing medical tests, so that we are able to unearth the complications that we have in our body, in our systems. Mr. Speaker, there are major complications which can be caused by diabetes. Stroke is one such, Mr. Speaker. We have seen a number of increased cases of stroke in our society. That can be reduced by having this. Sexual dysfunction, Mr. Speaker, has been a cause of marriages. Families are breaking up because of sexual dysfunctions. And this is mainly because of diabetes also, Mr. Speaker. We have seen people losing memory. We have seen people heart failing. We have seen kidney cases going up, Mr. Speaker. And this can only be because our people have not taken the initiative to do the screening so that they can know their diabetes levels and manage it when they still have a chance to do it. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and I want to appreciate the initiative taken by Honorable colleague Ruwaida
She has done a good research on this topic, and we are hoping that the government and the implementation committee will be able to ensure that these things that we have said here, Mr. Speaker, will not only just be what we said, but will be implemented. And we give diabetes the same importance that we have given HIV, Mr. Speaker, because with the kind of importance and the attention the HIV has received in the country, Mr. Speaker, it has worked, and the cases of HIV have gone down. If we can give the same attention to diabetes, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure we'll have a healthy nation, and a number of our people will be healthier. If you go by the numbers, which is about to have 1 million suffering, and those are the known cases. There are so many other cases, Mr. Speaker, which are not known because they have not gone for HIV, for tests required to establish whether they have diabetes or not. So if we can ensure that this is done, then I'm sure we'll have served our society in a lot better way to ensure that these complications that come with diabetes, Mr. Speaker, are stopped and controlled at a very early stage when we still have a chance to do it as a nation, when we still have a chance to do it as individuals. And I want to encourage even members to use it and to do this kind of test screening ahead of time so that they have a chance of managing this healthy challenge ahead of time, because diabetes should never kill. Once you understand it and you understand the ways to manage it, Mr. Speaker, there's no reason whatsoever why you should die. And with those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, and urge that our government will be able to put it into practice and put the policies and the proposals that have been put forth, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the 4 pillars, the 4 agenda of the president, one of them being health and another one being in diet, they are so correlated. There are a lot of similarities. All of them are going to ensure that we have a healthy nation and a healthy country called Kenya, because that's the strength of any nation, which is going to succeed. When we have healthy people, Mr. Speaker, our issues will be a lot more addressed in a more supra way, and the people will be able to be strong enough to do a lot of other things which are required of them to ensure that the society is growing in leaps and bounds. With those many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I supported the motion, and thank you for the opportunity.
Very well. Next on the rota here is Honorable Boya.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. From the word go, let me start by saying that the figures given here, as the statistics we have currently in the government, is not even a half of people who are suffering of diabetes in this country. I'll try not to repeat what my colleagues have said, but first allow me to thank my sister, Honorable Obo, for what she has pointed out here. This is a real condition we are facing in this country, but it's a clear pointer that we've been living in denial as a country when our people are suffering. The truth is we are leading a sick population in this country, and we have not come out clearly on how we can avert this challenge which is before us. When you look at the health system in this country, we have around 3 diseases which can be avoided, which can be contained, diabetes being one of them. But we have not done much as a country to ensure that everything is bring in conformity with the policies which we need to guide the treatment in this country. Diabetes is not a killer disease, but it has been made in this country in a situation whereby we intervene in diabetic cases when it is too late and it becomes too expensive to our people to contain diabetes in this country. Let us re-examine the health system which we have in the country currently as being managed by the county governments. I can authoritatively tell this House today that we are failing as a country when it comes to the management of diabetes, when it comes to the management of hypertension, when it comes to the management of cancer. All these diseases have made our people to suffer seriously because we are intervening very late, and we cannot afford late intervention because of the resource which we have in this country. What I can propose as a member of parliament in this country today, that it's high time we need to look into the health system which we have. And if all these diseases cannot be contained at the earliest time possible, we need to come and face the act which is in implementation currently today and separate the 3 key killer diseases in this country and be managed nationally from the national government. Because if you go deep into the county governments, go and look at what is available in the nearest dispensary to your home. You'll agree with me that even those people who are living around that dispensary don't have faith in that dispensary. Because many times when they go to that dispensary, they don't get what they deserve from that dispensary down there. So this would be a wake-up call to the county governments. If they cannot manage the 3 diseases I've mentioned, as a government, we need to come out very strongly because we cannot sit back and see our people dying over diseases which you can avoid. Look at the situation of HIV, diabetes currently today. We are talking about 500,000. But the reality, which is currently available all over the country, I can tell you here authoritatively that those Kenyans who are suffering out of this disease and are not known are double this figure which we are talking about here. They suffer down there. Nobody can reach them. It has never been reported anywhere. And we go out with this figure here. We talk about 500,000 when we know over 1 million people are dying in silence. When you look at people who have come out to report their cases or to go to their facilities and look for treatment, in rural areas there, they come when it's too late. The drugs are too expensive for them. They cannot afford. So as a house where we make laws and we represent people, we need to come out and say diabetes treatment in this country should be made free. Examination or tests for diabetes should be made free and mandatory so that we intervene at the opportune time when we can still manage these conditions. Look at the diabetes drugs outside there. If you are not supported by the government, 99% of Kenyans cannot afford them. And for those who can afford them, you'll also realize they are not available. So you'll find people are going for cheap diabetes drugs which are not helping them. Look at the drugs we are importing in this country. Our own way of testing efficacy of drugs in this country is also one thing. Go to our chemists here where we are buying drugs. Majority of drugs we are buying outside here are either expired in the country of origin or fake drugs in the market. So we end up pumping chalk to our people who are not treating them. So then we say people are not responding to treatment. Well, in the same sense, we are not treating these people. So I want to suggest here that let us go extra mile and re-examine our health system in this country. What we feel cannot be managed by counties, let us be bold enough and say those functions be taken by the national government, and we make treatment of cancer, diabetes, HIV/AIDS, and hypertension free to be managed by the national government in the benefit of our people so that we save this country from unnecessary deaths, unnecessary sufferings, and unnecessary expenditure. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Before I give the next one, let me recognize a school here at the public gallery called Miruriri Secondary School from South Imenti constituency, Meru County. They are welcome again. Shall we have Honorable Janet? Is that member in?
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuchukua fursa hii pia kuunga mwenzangu mkono kuhusu mjadala huu kuhusu mambo ya ugonjwa wa sukari katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Na ni ukweli Mheshimiwa Spika, vile wachunguzi wamefanya na wakapata 1% ya watu hawa wale wanaugua ugonjwa wa sukari. Hii ni ukweli mtupu Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningeomba kama kiongozi kwamba tuwe na mahali penye hao watu wanaweza enda na wachunguzwe, wajue wanaugua namna gani Mheshimiwa Spika. Na vile mwenzangu Mheshimiwa Tom amesema, ukweli ukienda kule mashinani watu hawajui maana ya kuchipima katika miili zao Mheshimiwa Spika. Na ndipoza hivi majuzi nilikutana na mmoja wao, ule alikuwa akiugua ugonjwa wa sukari Mheshimiwa Spika, na nikamuuliza umeenda kupata matibabu? alinijibu akasema, mimi hukunywa pombe ya chang'aa na nina imani kwamba hiyo sukari itaisha. Sasa Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ya muhimu sana tuhamasishe hao watu wale wanaugua ugonjwa wa sukari katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu kuna wengi wale hawajimutu kimaisha, kuna wengi wanakaa kwa maisha ya upweke, Mheshimiwa Spika, na unaona kwamba hawana hata fedha za kwenda kujipima kama wako wagonjwa ama hawako wagonjwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kukuhusia baadhi ya maneno yale wenzangu wameongea katika nyumba hii, kusema kwamba Mheshimiwa Spika, ni chakula ile tunakula katika nchi yetu ya Kenya na maisha ile tunaishi kama sisi viongozi na hala wale watu tunahudumia katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, tena wenzangu wamesema kwamba lazima tukue na mafunzo, tufunze watu jinsi ya kwenda kujipima katika jamii, na ndipoza wasikuje wakumbwe na mambo kama hii, mambo ya kisukari, na wajikute kwamba hawajaenda katika hospitali zetu kwenda kujipima. Mheshimiwa Spika, na ninaungana na wenzangu, Mheshimiwa Spika, serikali yetu kuu ichukulie nafasi yake ya kuhakikisha kwamba haya matibabu yenye tunasema kuhusu watu wa mambo ya kisukari imetuilia maanani. Mheshimiwa Spika, na wenzangu pia wamesema wacha watu wakuwe kama wanaspoti, yani wafanye mazoezi katika miili zao, na ninashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa sababu wanaspoti katika nyumba hii. Wakati tumeenda mazoezi mahali penye tulikuwa tumeenda na viongozi wenzetu, tuliona kwamba nchi zingine zinatenga nafasi za watu wao kwenda kufanya mazoezi, na hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika inatupatia sisi nafasi pia tuwe na nafasi ya kuhamasisha watu wajue kwamba miili zao zinatakikana sikuwe kwamba zinafanya mazoezi ndiposa wasikuje wakumbwe na mambo kama haya. Mheshimiwa Spika, na vile vile ninavyosema hata katika nyumba hii, Mheshimiwa Spika, hata sisi kama viongozi kuna wale wameathirika katika miongoni mwetu, Mheshimiwa Spika, na wenda ikawa wengine hawajajua wachukue nafasi gani ama wafanye namna gani ndiposa angalau wapate nafuu katika miili zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, na ndiposa ninamshukuru Mheshimiwa Ruaida kuleta swala hili ama kuleta mswada huu katika bunge hii, na sisi pia tutoe maoni yetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, ile ninajua kwamba hata tukienda katika kule mashinani sisi pia tutapata nafasi, kwa sababu ninashukuru kuna makanisa madhehebu katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, kwa sababu ukienda kama kanisa la Seventh Day utapata kwamba kuna hizo vipimo ya kupima magonjwa katika kanisa hilo. Na mimi nasi hata wachungaji katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, iwapo pia watatusaidia katika sehemu zao kuhakikisha kwamba hata vipimo hizi zimeenda mahali hapo, Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa inatusaidia sana. Na nikirudi kama kwa serikali ya kaunti, Mheshimiwa Spika, nikikuja kama kaunti yangu, kweli watu wanateseka mno. Ukienda kama sehemu za kule Senda Kwanza penye Mheshimiwa Ferdinand anatoka, unaona kwamba tumepoteza watu wengi mno wale wanaugua ugonjwa wa kisukari, na hawa wenzetu viongozi katika mashinani huenda ikawa wanaongojea sisi katika bunge kuu ama serikali kuu kuhakikisha kwamba tunateremsha haya madawa kule chini. Mheshimiwa Spika, na sio hii magonjwa tu ya kisukari. Mheshimiwa Spika, wengi pia wana ugonjwa wa saratani katika miili zao ama mahali pao penye wako. Mheshimiwa Spika, na itakuwa vyema Mheshimiwa Spika iwapo tutakuwa na uhamasisho wa kuhamasisha hawa watu jinsi ya kujichunga na kujipima. Mheshimiwa Spika, itakuwa ni vizuri sana. Inakuja kwa mambo ya maisha, kwa sababu wengi wanataka kukula chakula cha mafuta. Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini hapa awali unaona mababu zetu, mama zetu, enzi zile walikuwa wanatafuta chakula kwamba ile inaweza kujenga mwili na sio chakula ya kutufurahisha tuwe wanono ama tuwe wembamba. Na unajua Mheshimiwa Spika, wengine ufikiria ukiwa na ugonjwa wa kisukari hiyo ugonjwa inakufanya unanona. La, kuna wale hata wamekonda Mheshimiwa Spika na wana hiyo ugonjwa wa kisukari. Sasa ndiposa tunasema iwapo tunaweza kuwa na hizo vipimo ya kupima kwamba wewe unaungua kivipi, itatuwezesha kuhakikisha kwamba tutakuwa na maisha mazuri katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, Mheshimiwa Spika, na kama hata viongozi pia tutapata nafasi mzuri vile nimesema kuhamasisha watu wetu kule mashinani kuhakikisha kwamba wanapata afya zao, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika,
Honorable Janet, I am afraid that I suspect you are concluding because we must, being 10 minutes to 1, we will be calling the mover to reply. Would you have a few seconds to conclude your thoughts?
I'm almost, Mheshimiwa Spika. Karibu nimalize, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa nataka nimshukuru mwenzangu nikisema kwamba isikuwe tu ni mjadala katika bunge hili, lakini alete mswada, Mheshimiwa Spika, ule unaweza kufanya angalau tukikuja kwa mambo ya pacheti tunahakikisha kwamba tumetenga pesa, kwa sababu katika jamii hii tuko na walemavu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Wale pia hawawezi kutembea wafike mahali penye wanaweza kupata matibabu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na ndiposa ninamsihi iwapo anaweza kuleta mswada, Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi tutauunga mkono kuhakikisha sisi tunaendelea mbele. Na nimshukuru mwenzangu Ruaida kwa maoni mazuri na mjadala huu. Asante sana, Mheshimiwa Spika.
Very well. Honorable members, this motion had time limitation, and being 10 minutes to the time the House must rise, we must call the mover to reply. But the mover could be gracious enough to donate to a few members, and it will be good for her to say who are those members. Mover, would you be gracious enough?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to give other members a few minutes, contribute my minutes. I will give 2 ladies 2 minutes each. Hon Janita and Glaswell, 2 minutes each.
Who is that?
And the men, Gladwell. Baringo MP. Hon Janita, 2 minutes. Hon Sharif, 1 minute. Hon Benjamin Tayari, 1 minute. Hon Jonah Mburu, 1 minute. Hon Mabonga, 1 minute. I'll remain with 1 minute. We can start with Hon Mabonga.
Yes. Mabonga.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since I have just a minute to say something on this motion, I wish to appreciate my colleague to have brought this kind of motion. The nation is sick, Mr. Speaker, and the observations that we've made with these people who are suffering from diabetic is very pathetic. You've just heard that actually this kind of disease is the one that actually causes some kidney failure and heart diseases. And because we are investing a lot of money in this kind of diseases, Mr. Speaker, early screening can save a lot. Something else, Mr. Speaker, you need to note that most of these patients at home, they're given drugs by the doctors and instructed to inject themselves. The same drugs are supposed to be kept under the fridge or in the fridge. And some of these people, even they have no fridges, they have no electricity, so even managing themselves is a problem. We need to come up with a proper budget for this.
Honorable Gladwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also want to say something about diabetes. Especially, we have diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2. And what is disturbing most of the adults is diabetes type 2, sorry. This one is coming because of the lifestyle of the people. We realize that currently the way we do our things, most of us are driving, many of us use vehicles, and the worst one is the border which has come to the rural, because for a long time, our people in the villages, especially my home, there had never been somebody with diabetes. But currently, because people are using border from door to door, there is a problem in everywhere. Mheshimiwa Rueda, you have done something very well. People need awareness. Currently, people are taking honey even when they are diabetic. They are taking a lot of fruits, and it has fructose. They are taking a lot of milk, and it has lactose. So even awareness is not there for even the people who have already been established. So it is important that this parliament considers to see into it that the people who are sick from diabetes are considered and budgeted for, because the disease is very expensive to manage. And I think 3/4 of the population of this house are either managing diabetic people or some of them are sick. And it is an...
Very well. Who was the next one? Honorable Danita.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity, and allow me to congratulate the member for Lamu County, Honorable Speaker. She is speaking for many of us. Honorable Speaker, I think that the zeal and determination that we had in fighting malaria, Honorable Speaker, should be the zeal that can be actually directed towards diabetes. Diabetes is killing our people, Honorable Speaker, in this country, just like cancer and many other diseases, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to urge members of Parliament, Honorable Speaker, to really take the issue of diabetes, the issue of cancer, the issue of HIV, the issue of malaria, the issues of health, Honorable Speaker, that are actually issues that are serious in this country, Honorable Speaker, to be issues that can really find favor within their campaigns, within our campaigns, Honorable Speaker. It is true, Honorable Speaker, that diabetes, Honorable Speaker, and cancer, which are diseases, Honorable Speaker, that were traditionally for the rich and the royalties, Mr. Speaker, is now catching our poor people, Honorable Speaker, in the counties. So, Honorable Speaker, the rich and the poor are not spared, Honorable Speaker, of diabetes. We are talking too much, Honorable Speaker. I think it is time to act in this country, Honorable Speaker, because diabetes is going to kill this country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to support the member, Honorable Speaker, because she's speaking for so many of us. If we are not infected, Honorable Speaker, we are affected, Honorable, just like disability. Honorable Speaker, people are amputated out of diabetes. Honorable Speaker, when someone gets cut, amputated the hand or a leg, it is because of diabetes and they become disabled. Honorable Speaker, this is a very good motion, Honorable Speaker, that the member can actually move it further to see how do we allocate funds and how do we discuss about a disease that has not really been discussed, Honorable Speaker. I really want to thank the member and the opportunity to talk about a serious health issue that is affecting millions in this country. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Boro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Madam Captain from Lamu, for donating your minute to me. I want to support this motion on the onset. One thing I want to tell you is that there are still myths about diabetes. There are still people who believe that diabetes is purely a hereditary disease, which is not. Other people who have no history of diabetes are still getting diabetes in families. They are still believing that diabetes is an old man's disease. Diabetes is also getting young men who are 20, 30, 40. They are getting diabetes because of the lifestyle and because diabetes is real within us. Diabetes is not a killing disease. If well diagnosed and on time, it is not a killing disease. If you are given proper advice by professionals on the eating habits, on the workouts that you should do, then it's not a killing disease. One thing we are suffering is diabetes is going to the villages because we are all eating all these carbohydrates day in, day out, day in, day out. You go to the village, it is only potatoes and ugali. I think we should also change our eating habits. Diagnosis should be done at every time when you go to a hospital. The way we do blood pressure, the way we do temperature, the way we do weight. When you go to a hospital, then diabetes should be screened immediately. Thank you, Madam, for donating the minute, and God bless. And
well, next is Honorable Tayari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Rueda, for giving me this time. This motion is very, very important because the most important thing is for us to create understanding and awareness to the community. And this is the most basic thing which is lacking, especially in matters to do with diabetes and high blood pressure. What I can say is that we need to create a structure which needs to start from the schools, the workplaces, community centers, and places of worship in regard to awareness of diabetes. This will help us create an understanding why many people are suffering from this disease. If you look currently, my colleague was talking about people living in the urban centers, but the people in the rural centers are the ones who are affected most because they lack.
Finally, we have Honorable Adman Ali.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in congratulating Honorable Roida, MP Lamu County, for bringing this very important motion in this parliament. Honorable Speaker, as many have spoke, this is one of the silent killing disease. Honorable Speaker, the effectiveness of this disease is that many Kenyans, they cannot afford themselves for curing of this disease. Especially, Honorable Speaker, this problem mostly you must be controlling in terms of diet, in terms of nutrition. Honorable Speaker, you may agree with me that many community in this country, they cannot afford to choose what kind of food to eat. At the same time, Honorable Speaker, the medication of this problem is very expensive. So, Honorable Speaker, I would urge the government to...
Very well. Honorable Obo, you have 1 minute to reply.
I would like to thank you all the members who contributed, especially the doctors. Honorable Speaker, through this motion, we affirm that no illness should lead to any family financial ruin. It will be a victory for people of this country from Lamu to Laikipia, from Kilifi to Kisii, whose life will be more secured because of this motion. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 5.3, I request you, Mr. Speaker, to defer this question to another date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, you reply. Honorable members, I'll ped putting the question to that particular motion to a subsequent time. Honorable members, the time being 2 minutes after 1 p.m., this House starts adjourned till Wednesday, 13th March 2019 at 2:30 p.m.